Welcome to the Disenfranchised Podcast. We're that podcast all about those franchises of one, those films that fancy themselves full-fledged franchises before falling flat on their face after the first film. And we are closing out tonight our three-part miniseries, The Kingening, The Drawing of Three. I am your host, Stephen Foxworthy, and joining me, as always, the man who can see your dirty pillows, but then everyone can. It's Tucker. Hey, Tucker.
Hi, Stephen. How's it going?
It's going all right, man. It's going all right.
That's cool.
Yeah. How are you?
Yeah. I'm all right.
Yeah. Right on.
Yeah.
It's a Monday night. We got an episode dropping in a few days, and we're just gonna chill out and record it for a little bit. It's just gonna be you and me though, because I got a text from Brett I don't know if you got this text from Brett a little while ago. He's stuck in a high school gymnasium and there's a fire.
What?
I don't really know what's going on, but I hope he's okay. It sounded pretty dire, but I hope he's okay. We wish him a speedy return. But yeah, this is the third week in a row, Tucker, where you and I have sat down, because Brett has, we did a whole month of horror shit, and just Brett has just not been here, which is weird.
That's a damn shame, really.
That's usually the way we can get him in the door. We're like, hey, Brett, horror stuff. And he's like, I'm there. Son of a bitch, I'm in. And he just like, fuck you. No, he didn't actually say that. He does wish he is here. I'll tell you what, though, guys. Just between us, because we're family. If you're listening, you're family.
Like Olive Garden.
Kinda. Yeah, except, with less shitty Italian food.
Shitty Italian food.
I know, right? Even when it's shitty, it's still kind of good.
It's real good.
It is. If you want to hear Brett this month talking about something Stephen King adjacent, you need to be on Patreon, because this month on Patreon, we are covering, and I think this will drop this upcoming Sunday.
If I remember to do it.
If you remember to do it. You sure didn't remember last week's What Are We Watching? Hopefully it's been posted by the time this drops. Hopefully this episode drops on time. Fuck, dude.
I hope so. Gosh.
Just, it's anarchy. Everything's just thrown into a tizzy. But sign up for the Patreon, patreon.com/disenfranchpod. We are covering The Rage Carrie 2 for Unenfranchised this month. And Brett joined us for that conversation. So we did get a chance to talk to Brett this month, and you get to hear all his wonderful thoughts on the movie on the franchise, the remake of which we're discussing on today's episode. And Tucker, what movie are we covering to close out our Kingening Drawing of Three miniseries?
I almost said The Rage Carrie 2. I almost said it.
That's behind the paywall, dude. That's behind the paywall.
It's just still sitting here on my desk. I was just looking at it, and I was like, man, I wish I was watching that movie now.
I did the same thing when we recorded the Rage episode. I said, like, that's a Swan thing, and it was because I was looking at IMDb, and there was an ad for the new season of Feud, Capote versus the Swans, which I'm very excited to watch.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so I said, it's a Swan thing, and I was like, fuck, no, it's not that. It's another thing, and I had to correct myself. But that's why I did that.
Word. We are covering 2013's remake, reinterpretation of the source material. Depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
2013's Carrie.
We are covering 2013's Carrie, directed by Kimberly Pearson, starring Chloe Grace Moretz, Julianne Moore, Judy Greer, Gabriella Wilde, Portia Doubleday, Alex Russell, Ansel Elgort, and motherfucking Barry Shabaka Henley. We stand a motherfucking legend. What a cast, Tucker. What a picture.
Yeah, dude. It's a really good cast.
It is a really good cast.
Even the actors I don't particularly like the dude that plays Johnny Tommy. Who's the...
Ansel Elgort.
Yes. Like, I don't particularly...
Turns out he's allegedly a piece of shit, so...
I don't have... Well, I mean...
He can allegedly kiss my entire asshole, but yeah.
I don't know anything about him. I just don't normally like the movies he's in. I liked him in the Edgar Wright movie. He was really good.
Baby Driver, he's good. Spielberg's West Side Story, he's phenomenal in.
Oh, I didn't see that.
In a very similar vein to what he's doing here, honestly.
Yeah, well, maybe I just don't like that movie he made where he likes the sick girl. Remember all those sick girl movies we had for a
Oh
while?
yeah, which one was that? Was that
Wasn't he in
Mean
all
Earl and
of
the
them?
Dying Girl, or you know what? He might have been. Let's fucking
No,
do
it's
an Ansel Elgort sidebar. God help us all. Um, let's fucking do that. I guess I don't know what we're doing.
yeah,
The
dude.
Fault in Our Stars. He was in. He was
Okay,
in
that's the one. That's the
the
John Green one.
yeah, that is. He's in the Divergent series.
Yep, he
Um,
sure fucking is.
he sure fucking is. Um, God, what else? Paper Towns. He also was in Paper Towns. Good God. This is his first movie. His first on-screen role, in point of fact, is 2013's Carrie.
Really?
Yes, he is also in Jason Reitman's Men, Women, and Children. Paper
I think he's great in
Towns.
this.
He's
He's really
actually
good.
better than I was just like, motherfucker, why is he charming?
Right? He's great. Like
I was just like, motherfucker.
both him and the girl that plays Sue Snell, they're really good at like kind of expressing how complicated these two characters are
Mm,
because they're not bad people, but they're kids, so sometimes they do shitty things, but at least they have like the hindsight to be like, oh, that was shitty.
right. Which
And I think the way they portray that is very like in the original, it was kind of ambiguous until the end. Even when you see private moments between the two, you're still not sure. You're like, are they fucking with her though?
right. And I
But in
think
this, you
that's
could tell they
intentional
were
on De Palma's part
genuine.
in the
Yeah.
original. But yeah, in this one they're definitely like, and I think that's I think part of that is also the other adaptations of Carrie, though, and I've watched every cinematic or stage adaptation of Carrie over the course of the past 3 days. So I've been like eating and sleeping Carrie. Um, it's something that gets like Sue's motives get clearer in every subsequent adaptation. Now I've not read the source material, so I don't know if that's baked into King's novel at all, or if that's just something that's just become clearer over the course of the telling. I don't know, but like I think it's pretty clear in the musical in particular, the 1988 stage musical. I think it's fairly clear there. And then I think the 2002 version also does. I think casting Candace McClure there gives you a kind of a real sense of her vulnerability and authenticity, which is something that Candace McClure plays really well. Um, and she would go on to do that in Battlestar Galactica also.
Word.
But I think it just becomes, I think, progressively more obvious and more baked into the thing as these adaptations go.
Agreed. Agreed.
And Tommy becomes more his own agent than in this one than just kind of a guy who's going along with it.
Yeah.
Which I think
Agreed.
that part of that is in King's novel as well, from what I've read. Like Tommy begins to see Carrie as a friend because he actually takes the time to get to know her, versus here where we're just kind of, or versus like the original where you don't really know what his motives are, although he seems like a genuinely nice dude.
Yeah. Well, like in this one, you can really see that he's starting to enjoy
Mm-hmm.
his time with her, and they're becoming pals and stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's very clear in this one, and I
Mm-hmm.
think it's the performance kind of rests on that, and I think both of those actors really they play it well.
They
I
sell
think
it. They really do.
I believe
Yeah.
it. I believe it.
Now
That's what I'm
I'm
saying.
glad it doesn't go as far as the stage musical, which they like Tommy and Carrie end up in love by the end of it, which is really weird. They don't end up together, obviously, because everything plays out the way that it does in every other adaptation. But like Tommy starts to fall in love with Carrie as they're dancing, and Sue's standing on the sideline screaming, "Why? Why did I set this up? Is he falling in love with her? What did I do?" Like that's a whole like brief little section of the musical, at least in the 88 version. I didn't
Well,
see
you
the
see,
2012 revival of it. So
you see kind of a hint of that in here because the gym teacher lady thinks that's why Sue Snell is there.
right.
And
Yeah.
that's why she kicks her out. And
Well,
she's like, no, dude. Like, no. It's just like, doesn't matter. I'm
And
Judy Greer. Eh.
that's part
I
of
love
the
Judy Greer. She's great in this too. BT Dubs.
no, Judy Greer is always excellent. No, we stand Judy Greer 100%. But she does this. Betty Buckley does that in the original film as well. Like, kind of shoves Sue out when Sue's trying to stop. Sue sees
Hmm.
Amy Irving looks up and sees Chris and Billy and Nancy Allen and John Travolta and the bucket of blood, and tries to like stop, and like you see Betty Buckley like pulling her back and like keeping her
Yo,
from going forward there.
and I like how much more sinister the bad kids are in this one. Like when they're up in those rafters and dude is like, yo, this is a straight up felony. And she's like,
That's
fucking good, dude.
that's also in the 2002 version, which leads me to believe it's probably in the book. Like, John
Hmm.
Travolta is just kind of a doofus in the original.
Yeah, they're all just kind of like idiots. Like,
Nancy
is it
Allen,
malicious? Yes, but they don't seem like they're just like, "Rah!" They're not like rabid,
I
evil
get the
fucks.
impression that no one in the cast knew what movie they were making in 1976. Like,
Yeah.
Piper Laurie thought the whole thing was a dark comedy, and she's like, "Why else would I be playing it so over the top? Like, that's got to be what you're going for, right?" And then Nancy Allen said she thought that her and Travolta were just playing like the idiotic comic relief. Like, and then she saw the movie, like, "Oh, we're evil." Um,
Oh,
oh, that's what's happening here. Okay. Nancy Allen, who would go on to marry Brian De Palma. That's a
nice.
thing that happened, yeah.
Yeah, dude.
So, yeah, Brian De Palma, who's a creepy, weird dude, but I don't think he's ever done anything like wrong, like as far as I know. But he named his
It's
daughter
all legal.
Lolita, so by this,
Friend to this director. They are friends. They're close friends, is what I
oh,
read.
right on.
The director of this film and Brian De Palma. The
Okay,
director of this film, of course,
Kimberly
I'm
Pierce.
familiar with because she directed Boys Don't Cry. And that was,
Oh,
ironically, given the title, one of the first movies that really made me just like bawl my eyes out. I was
interesting.
like maybe 17 when I saw that, and I was like, what the fuck? Have you seen that movie, Steven?
I have not. I've not seen that or Stop Loss, her other film that she
You
made.
should see
Those.
Boys Don't Cry, but it's really upsetting. So be prepared for that.
I mean, yeah, I figured. Yeah,
But it's a wonderful movie, and you need to see it.
it's kind of wild to me that she didn't get like a blank check after Boys Don't Cry, because it's
I
usually
agree because that was
what.
a big deal.
Yeah,
Like it was an indie film and it made a shit ton of money, and word of mouth on that was everywhere.
right. And then she didn't make another film until 2008, and then didn't make another film after that until this movie, and then hasn't made a film in the last 10 years.
Well, well,
Which, I mean, has she gone to TV? Like, I guess that's kind of my
mm,
question then, because yeah, it looks like she's been doing a lot of TV. She's done just kind
yeah.
of episodes. Since this, she's done episodes of Manhattan, American Crime, Game of Silence, Halt and Catch Fire, I Love Dick, Six, Dear White People, Kidding, and P Valley.
Oh, kidding. That's a really good show.
It's that Jim Carrey show, right?
I want to rewatch that. That
I
was really
need to
good.
watch. I've
Yeah.
also heard good things about Halt and Catch Fire.
I don't know anything about that.
But then, following Boys Don't Cry, she directed an episode of The L Word in 2006. So really, nothing between
Wow.
'99 and 2006 either. Like, and I'm sure she had some projects in development, but the fact that she can't take the success of Boys Don't Cry and parlay that into something bigger is honestly an indictment of Hollywood and their treatment of female directors, quite frankly.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Because this thing is actually, I think it's well directed. Like, there
I
was a
think so
lot that I
too.
liked about this movie. I'm just gonna put my cards on the table. I enjoyed this. I had fun with this one. Is it a perfect film? No, but
No.
I had a good time.
This one for me it's weird because every scene in this film I either love or hate. Like there's
Mm.
nothing in between.
Oh,
And
wild.
for me it's almost like the tale of two films because there is an original interpretation and adaptation of the source material that is always fantastic whenever they're doing something I've never seen before or doing a scene in a slightly different way. That really stands out to me. But then the other film that's in here is the just straight up remake, beat for beat, of Carrie.
Right. Which
And it's almost like they're, checkered in there, like one after another, because you have a really great scene and the next one you'll be like, what the fuck? Like,
I've seen
you
this
don't have to do
done
it,
better somewhere else.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, when they're doing something interesting with it, it's one of the best movies I've ever seen, especially from around that time.
Right. And there's some
Or
missed
adaptation.
opportunities. There's some missed opportunities in there as well, like the cyberbullying angle that doesn't ever really get touched on so much as just to kind of gloss over, like, this is how kids bully now, and then we move on.
Yeah. So another problem I have with this movie, I do like this movie, I promise I do, but
Look, we
the more
can
I
like a
watch it, the
movie and
more
still
I
have
like,
complaints about it.
I have nitpicks because I've seen it a bunch of times.
That's what it means to think critically about film, is to be able to enjoy something despite having issues.
The
Continue.
problem with the parts that are a straight up, like, damn near shot for shot remake of the original film
Mm-hmm.
is that they don't feel like a modern film. And that even extends to, like, Carrie and her house
Mm-hmm.
and everything about her and her mother, even their car. It's almost like the Brady Bunch movie, where, like, they're from the 70s, but
Right.
they're somehow been plopped into modern times.
Well, and I think that's how they're trying to convey the religious fundamentalism of it, because I mean, if you look at a lot of, like, religious fundamentalist individuals, it's the long denims. It's like fashion stopped in the 60s
But
and
they
70s.
drive a 40-year-old car and still use, like, a little Zenith tube radio from the 1940s. Like,
Sure. No, I mean,
no,
yeah.
dude. Like,
I guess it depends on the degree to which they're fundamentalist, honestly. Um, I came from a pretty conservative religious background. We can get into that more later. I don't really want to dig into that right out of the gate. But I have a lot of thoughts about kind of that. I've been digesting a lot about religious extremism lately. So I revisiting Carrie kind of dredged up a lot of stuff and made me think about a lot of things. So um, I'm interested to get into that. So just heads up, 17 minutes into this episode, if you're someone who tends to dislike when I talk religion, maybe sit this one out, because it's gonna come up. It's part of my background. It's who I am. It's where I come from.
it's
It's gonna
relevant.
happen. It
It's
is
straight up
relevant to our
relevant
discussion
within the
today.
context
So
of this discussion, for sure.
I know not everybody likes it. I know it's not everybody's favorite topic, and look, I get it, but it's germane to our conversation, so it's gonna come up.
It's
Um,
gonna come up.
Before we get into all of that, Tucker, I do want to ask you about your history with Carrie, as a franchise, as a property. What is your familiarity with it? What do you know about it? Like, kind of let me have it, man.
Oh, how exciting! This is good. I've, I feel like Carrie has existed in my life since before I can remember things, because it's one of my mom's favorite movies, the
Oh,
De
right
Palma
on.
version, of course.
Yeah, of course. I met your mom. She's a sweet lady.
Yeah, she's all right. Oh,
Your dad's fucking hilarious too, by the way.
he's ridiculous, man.
He is. He's a
Oof.
crazy cat.
He's quite a character, you could say.
He sure is.
But yeah,
I was calling you Tucker, and he's like, "Oh, I'm Tuck, so I'm very confused right now."
yeah,
That was a fun conversation.
yeah. Well, like I say, the original Carrie is one of my mom's favorite movies. And so I feel like I've kind of known about it forever.
Mm-hmm. Like, you knew
Like,
about it before you had actually seen it.
well, and I was never, until I was of age, I was never technically allowed to watch, like, R-rated movies.
Gotcha. You say
Um,
technically there because I'm assuming it happened once or twice.
well, the lines blurred when I turned about 15 or 16, and I started getting into horror. So, like, there was really like they're like, well, he's into horror. Like, how are we gonna not let him watch R-rated movies? And he's like 15, so he's probably fine, you know.
Right.
Um, but I'm sure I saw like a TV edit of it when I was younger.
Okay.
I'm almost sure because I know we had it on VHS tape, like taped off TV. So
Right.
I saw the network TV edit, so it couldn't have been that bad.
Sure. Yeah.
But I've always known about it. Like I said a couple weeks ago on the Christine episode, I did have a small period of my adolescence where I read a whole bunch of Stephen King books. I
Right.
did read this, but I don't
Okay.
remember anything about it. Like I
I
said, I
learned
kind of
something this week. Apparently,
I
it's an
binged those
epistolary
books.
novel. I didn't know that. I didn't know it was like Dracula. Like it's all like letters and accounts and shit. I had no idea.
It's not well, yeah. And Stephen King said that was like what kept him writing it is because that was fun to do those to like mimic the styles of the different like press releases and like witness accounts and stuff.
I mean, we have a friend who frames everything that he writes as some form of epistolary something or other. JP Leck, friend of the
Oh
podcast,
yeah,
past and future
that
guest.
guy.
That guy. Pretty
That
much
guy.
everything he writes is some form of like third party writing. Um, Although it all seems to sound, very, very much his kind of more, shall we say, floral prose style. But yeah.
That's true. That's true. So yeah, I don't remember anything about this book. Um, when this one came out, of course, I was really into the Rage Carrie 2. That's
You?
worth mentioning, yes. And if you
The
want
fact
to,
that I had to like push this back, like I had to keep it on it was on the schedule for November. I had to keep it on the schedule and build an entire theme month around it because you so desperately wanted to cover the Rage Carrie 2. And I told you it wasn't going to happen until we could cover Carrie 2013 on the main feed. I
and here
said
we are.
we will cover, and so the links I go to make you happy with scheduling, Tucker.
And I appreciate it. I really do.
That's all I ask. All I ask is to be
I do.
appreciated. That's all I want.
I do. I do. So I saw this movie when it came out. I didn't see it at the theater.
I was going to ask
But
where you saw it, but no, not at the theater then. Okay.
I had a friend that worked at a family video, and so I
Mm.
got all the codes from all the movies that were coming out.
Oh, that's nice, dude. No wonder your voodoo is as stacked as it
That's
is.
why, well, and stacked and full of shit that I don't even like, because I was just getting random codes and popping them in, being like, all right,
Sure.
let's see what's up.
We're
Let's
going to
see
watch
what's
this
up.
now, I guess, which is why
At
you've got
some
to
point,
break it down
maybe.
into the this is shit, this is not categories. But yeah.
Yes, that's why I have lists on my voodoo. Yes, most people probably don't use that function, but I have to because I polluted it in the early days.
Tainted it early and
I
often.
did. I did. I saw it and I liked it a
Mm-hmm.
lot. I still felt very much like I do now that it's kind of two movies, and I like the one that's kind of a new take.
Yeah.
It's
I
a
feel like
50-50 movie, man. It's so weird.
every decade, I mentioned this to you in the chat, like every decade, someone decides we need to revisit Carrie. And I have a theory as to why that is. I think it's because the more high school life and high school reality changes from decade to decade, high schoolers generally remain the same. They're very petty, they're very concerned with appearances, in general terms, of course. um, Petty, concerned with image and vanity and popularity. They're those in the in crowd, those in the out. Like all of these things remain true within the dynamics of high school as we progress through the decades. So the story itself, in that sense, is very evergreen, without being. And then we can adjust some of the details and try to say something, and this is where I think it tends to get murky with all these different various adaptations, try to say something about what it's like, what life is like for teenagers today. And I think that's where these remakes and adaptations tend to miss the mark.
Which that's the most important thing about a remake.
Agreed.
That's the goal of a remake is to take this thing that worked back then and switch it up a bit so that it works now. Like, interpret it through a modern lens. And this
Exactly.
movie gets it half right.
And I mean, again, watching the 2002 version, watching the Rage Carrie 2 in 99 from 99, watching the 88 musical, like all of those things become abundantly clear. Like we're taking it up to a point, but like there's been a Carrie adaptation every decade since the novel came out. There's a movie in 76, a musical in 88, also in 88, Jason versus Carrie, Friday the 13th, part 7, The New Blood, my favorite of the franchise. So of course I have to count it. 99, you get the Rage Carrie 2. A couple years later, you get the Carrie made for TV movie that Brian Fuller wrote. And then you get in 2013, about 10 years after that, you get this movie. And I sent you guys a link the other day that they're considering another one with Hunter Schafer to star in that one. So I mean, there's something in that story that I think is evergreen that we find ourselves continuing to come back to. And I get it. There is something very universal about this story that there's a lot to do with it. It's just, can it be done well? And I would argue De Palma's the only one to do it really well, but I think this movie comes closest after De Palma. I think this movie comes closest.
I think as much as I think that the Rage Carrie 2 would have been better off not being a sequel,
Mm-hmm.
I do think that it does, as far as interpreting that story for a modern audience, I think it does the best at that. You know, even though it's not a remake,
Right.
I think that and
I
maybe
mean, it's
not in
certainly.
every way, but I think it's the strongest. Like, because like we said in Unenfranchised, peek behind the paywall.
Mm.
Um, like it's really good at being, 1998 the movie.
I was going to say, it's certainly more than any other movie, it feels very much of its time and place. Like this movie gets a lot of details right, but then some others kind of go for a more timeless feel. Like when they're trying on tuxes, Tommy like stops on the one that's got like the ruffles on the front, like the fringe ruffles on the front, and you're like, well, that's very 76. It's very similar to the tux that Tommy Ross wore to the prom in the original film. Like it tries to kind of ride those lines in various ways, like the way that the White family comports and carries themselves. You mentioned very 1970s, very old fashioned. So again, I think but in terms of crystallizing a film in its time and place, I don't think there is any movie more 90s than the Rage Carrie 2. I again, like I'm sitting there watching it going like, Go, Can't Hardly Wait, like all those movies from like that late 90s period that are just so 90s, like all those teen movies. And Rage Carrie 2 absolutely belongs in that conversation. Absolutely does.
You really need to see Idle Hands, Stephen. It's kind of upsetting that you haven't.
See which one? Sorry.
Idle Hands.
Idle Hands. Yeah, I haven't seen it yet.
I know.
Another one from 99
That's
on the same
that's
year as
gonna
the
be another
Rage
one that
Carrie 2.
you're gonna add to that list of movies that are, late 90s the movie.
Probably, yeah. I mean, you got the Devon Sawa, Jessica Alba, but all that doesn't really surprise me much.
Seth Green.
Yeah. Again, also in Can't Hardly Wait.
A very young Elton Henson, Vivica A. Fox,
Oh
Jack
God.
Noseworthy.
Oh God. Okay. Yeah. The late 90s,
Yeah.
the movie, man. And I mean, this one's
Really
got
good.
that early 2010s energy to it with that cast. Like, and the thing that's really wild about it, and this feels radical, even though it doesn't feel like it should feel as radical as it does. Chloe Grace Moretz, the first actual teenager to play Carrie.
Yep.
Never mind the fact that the rest of the cast is practically in their 20s and a good 10 years older than her. Like Chris and Sue are both like in their 20s, I think. The actor, I think the youngest members of the cast are maybe like 3 years older, so they're like 18, but she is like straight up 15 in this movie. And it I think that works in creating a sense of isolation and longing, because what younger teenager doesn't look up to and feel kind of awkward around older teens and like people that are more progressed and mature, quote unquote mature. Like I feel like that lends a lot to particularly the first half of the movie and her performance there. I don't know, what do you think about Chloe Grace Moretz in this film?
I think she's really good in this movie.
I do too.
I think that they did a really good job of I don't know, like with the way she had her hair and her wardrobe and stuff, they kind of made you believe that she could be like an outcast,
Mm-hmm.
and she sold it too.
Yeah.
Which, if you see her in anything else, she's a cute gal.
Yeah.
And they don't ugly her up or anything. Like they don't put her
No.
in glasses or put like a big hairy mole on her nose or
Or give her
something. Like
like, pigtails or whatever. Yeah.
it's all in the performance and
Mhm.
like the costume design,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, I think she's an incredible performer. I really do. Um, and this is the second movie we've covered from of hers fairly recently. We covered The Fifth Wave not too long ago.
Oh yeah, I forgot about
Yeah.
that movie because
Yes.
it sucked.
Because it's very forgettable. It's an imminently forgettable movie.
I
A lot
forgot
of
it like
those,
as
a lot of
soon as
those,
we recorded that podcast,
yep,
out of my brain.
out of your brain. A lot of those YA adaptations kind of fit into that zone of just like, this is so incredibly fucking forgettable.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, you know, yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, so but I think, but I remember her being one of my favorite parts of that movie as well. And I will
Mhm.
say the things that I enjoy most about this movie are the performances,
Yeah,
particularly
everybody's
her
great in
and
this, I think.
Julianne Moore. I think that's a 1-2 punch, and you need those two characters to really hit. And I think she really hits in this. I mentioned on Unfranchised yesterday, the thing that I was missing in so many of the other Carrie figures in these movies is like the facial expressiveness that Sissy Spacek really brought to it, and she was able to do a
Mhm.
lot just with her eyes.
Yeah.
And watching CGM in the like last third of this movie, Chloe Grace Moretz,
Yeah,
watching
no, I
Bella.
got it. I got it.
I saw you thinking real hard. I saw those gears turning and smoke starting to rise out of your
Smoke,
ears. So
dude.
you got there though. You
Somehow
got
it got through the headphones, man. I don't know how.
without overworking. It's good.
Yeah, no.
Um, like she doesn't quite hit the Spacek levels, but she's doing more with, and I think a lot of it might be CGI enhancement as well, like upon
Mhm.
reflection. But it feels like her eyes really pop in a way that, and I know one of her eyes is like blood over it, like a blood vessel is burst in her eye is kind of the image that we
Mhm.
get, which I know kind of helps that stand out a lot. But like she's doing the eye acting that Spacek is doing, again, not quite as overt, not quite as it's not, it doesn't pop quite as well as hers does, but I think she's doing it better than Angela Bettis or Emily Bergel. No offense to their performances whatsoever, they're both great, but I think she's doing that to a greater extent than the two of them are.
Well, I would disqualify Emily Bergel because, as we discussed yesterday, she is not playing Carrie.
I did say Carrie figure, but yes,
Okay, I'm just saying. So I don't know, man.
let the record show. I'd
Completely
say
different character. Completely
yes,
different character
but
in so many
related,
ways.
and therefore a Carrie
They are
figure.
sisters. Spoilers. If you haven't
Half
seen
sisters.
The Rage Carrie 2, they are straight up sisters, dude.
Spoilers for an almost 30-year-old movie, a 25-year-old movie.
But no one's seen it. That's the problem.
No. Look,
No one.
it's on HBO Max right now. Go watch
It
it.
sure is. Check it out. I
Yeah,
think it's.
man.
I think it's. Look, I think it's worth watching at least once. Are you gonna like it as much as I do? Probably not. But it's not a waste of time for sure.
Right. So, I mean, I watched all the Carries.
Yeah, dude.
I mean, it's my probably my least favorite of the Carries, but
Oh, yeah. Well,
sorry.
it's a tough room, you know.
Yeah, look, not everything
No,
has to be for everybody, and that's okay.
no, I'm not cool. I'm not cool. Yeah, I'm way into that.
But
Hey man, how many times is the principal gonna like the principal calling her different names is like the pearls in Batman's parents' death scene.
it
It's just
is.
in it just carries over. It's like that's how you oh, I'm in a Carrie movie. He called her
Mhm.
Cassie. Like
Or Casey. He does Casey in this one a few times. Yeah. It's a I mean it's kind of a
oh,
staple of the
it's
it's a staple of the
it
franchise,
is
right?
the staple.
Like
Yeah.
how do you and that it's kind of a shorthand, like how do you convey checked out educator, like guy who or because that I think that's the great irony of that character in all of these adaptations. And I think Barry Shabaka Henley is hands down the best actor to play the principal in any of these adaptations.
I
Like
was gonna say that too.
motherfucking Barry Shabaka Henley, that man can do no wrong. I love that man. Every time he shows up, it is a treat. Even if it's a movie I don't particularly like The
Agreed.
Terminal, I'm still having a good time because Barry's there. Like Barry signed up for this? Hell yeah. Um, love him in Collateral. If you've not seen Michael Mann's Collateral, the scene with him and Tom Cruise is
It's
fucking bone chilling. It's so good.
Yo, Collateral's one of the best films ever made.
It is
I
my,
think.
I think, second or third favorite Michael Mann movie. And
It's so good.
given like it's like that Heat is number one with a bullet because I fucking love Heat.
Yeah, but
Heat's one of my
Collateral is
top
the
five of all
most
time.
Michael Mann movie that you can get.
No, it's not.
I
No,
feel like
you
that's
clearly have not
stripped
seen
down
Miami Vice because Miami
to the
Vice is the most Michael
bones.
Mann movie that ever did Michael Mann. Michael
Yeah.
Mann is Michael Manning so hard in Miami Vice.
You're right, but the close second, okay, is
Okay,
Collateral.
I'll give you close second as Collateral.
He's Michael Manning his ass off in that
He
movie.
is. I think he is. He absolutely is. You're not wrong.
Like the
Um,
character archetypes, like the
yep.
dynamic, like it's the
Mm-hmm.
same thing he does in all of them, but this one
Mm-hmm.
it just feels like he's like, "All right, guys, I'm really in the groove on this
Yep.
one."
And then Miami Vice, and he's just like fucking gloves off. It's Michael Mann season, bitch. Um,
Mhm.
but he like it's Heat, Collateral, and Inside in the Insider. Like those are my top three. And I don't know where I know I put Heat at number one, but the other two I would need to rewatch to figure out where I put them. But they're both amazing masterworks, and I've not seen Ferrari yet. I need to, but
I
it's
don't
been a
really have
few
any interest
years.
in it, but
It's a Michael Mann movie. What the fuck are you
yeah, I
talking about?
know, but I don't know. I'll probably see it at some point. I'm just not like tripping over myself to
I mean,
collect.
I'm not rushing out to see it. Like I haven't seen it yet. I'm gonna, but I just haven't done it yet.
I'll probably watch it if somebody's like, "Hey, you want to watch Ferrari with me?" I'd be like, "Okay."
Smoke a bowl, watch Ferrari. Hell yeah.
Or if we covered it on the podcast.
I can't see any reason why we would cover it on the podcast.
What about the Ferrari 2, dude?
About Ferrari. Michael Mann is not making Ferrari 2. He's just not.
Hey, he's just gonna write the novelization, right? That's
Look, if for some reason Heat 2 falls through, we can cover Heat on the podcast. But
it's not gonna fall through, and we're gonna get Ferrari 2. Mark my words.
Heat 2
Ferrari
will
2,
be
the next chap, the missing pieces.
Heat 2 will be the first sequel Michael Mann has ever made. I think honestly, if we're going to cover a Michael Mann movie on this podcast, we have a better chance of covering Last of the Mohicans,
Oh yeah,
since that was part of a book series. But I
everybody
have
loves
no
books.
I mean the character of Natty Bumppo, who was renamed for the movie because Michael Mann thought the name Natty sucked, basically.
Well,
He
wrong.
called him Nathaniel Poe, is what he called instead of
Oh.
Nathaniel Bumpo. Um, just took the bum off. Just drop the bum. It's cleaner. Um, just called him Nathaniel Poe for the movie, but that character appears in like several James Fenimore Cooper novels, so that's the one I could feasibly see us covering. But
I think that we should do Manhunter.
oh, you know what? Manhunter is on the list. Manhunter is absolutely on the list.
I love that movie. I think
Manhunter
that's
fucking
probably my
rules. And
second favorite Michael Mann movie.
there
It's
is
Collateral,
there is some
Manhunter, and then
patron support. There's some patron support for Manhunter as well. So
yes, let's do it.
the people
Fuck,
that pay our
Steven.
bills
Put it
want
on
Manhunter.
there. Put it on the schedule, dude.
I look, man, when
Magic schedule wizard, do it.
if we didn't have something scheduled for Ferrari, I probably would have done it when Ferrari came
Ferrari.
out. But we
What are
already
we
had
doing
something
when
scheduled.
Ferrari's around? Oh wait, tell me off mic. Type it in the chat,
Like
and I'll react. But people have no idea.
Ferrari already came out. Like Ferrari came out last month.
What did we cover?
Last month we were in the middle of our Black Christmas-a-thon.
Oh fuck it. Well then, okay, that's cool.
We already had something else on the schedule, so we did that instead. And that kind of bites us in the ass a lot of times. Like we've got a couple theme months coming up this summer, and so like anything coming out those months, we have to kind of move around. Like I had to reshuffle our Dune episode, or the episode that we have coming out to tie in with Dune, because we've got the week Dune comes out, we've got a straight up, and then I had to do the same for. I think I had to do the same for when Deadpool 3 comes out, because again, I think same problem. We had a straight up scheduled. So your podcast, your episodes just get in the way of everything, man. Just fuck everything up.
They're worth it though. I get to share my favorite movies with my friends.
But we do have the next episode of Straight Up dropping at the end of February. So the odd February is a 5 Thursday month.
Be there
because it's a leap year, and the first and last day of the month
on
both
the
fall
leap
on
day.
Thursday. It will. That will be our leap day episode. So
very exciting.
Stay tuned. And that episode, of course, does not fit our general format. It's just whatever the fuck Tucker brings to the table. So
yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Though you're gonna run it the next time. I wasn't thrilled with my hosting abilities.
That you just gotta warm up to it, man. The more you do it, the better you'll get.
You're so good at it, though. But you're so good at it, Steven.
I've been doing it for a hot minute. I had a whole other podcast before this one that I was hosting. So
look at you. So.
And before that, like I emceed my high school talent show as a sophomore in high school at age 15. So the same age Chloe Grace Moretz was when she did this movie. Pulling it back.
Pulling it back. You know, I don't think we have to do the plot in 60 because it's Carrie.
Are you thwarting the coin of justice? Because I don't know if this got announced last week. It absolutely did. I do know. But the coin of justice is 100% back, my friend.
It's back.
It's back. I moved.
Though
and
you
found
never
it in
put
the
it
move.
on the socials. You never put it on the socials.
I didn't put it on the social. So I guess we're even for you missing. For you missing. What are we watching this past week?
Yes, still has not been released.
But yeah, let's go ahead, guys. Let's go ahead and do the plot, just in case no one's ever seen Carrie before.
Can we do the plot in 30 seconds?
If it falls to you, yes.
Oh shit, okay.
If it falls to me, fuck no.
It's easy. I can do it right now.
Well, then why don't you just go ahead and
forget
do
the coin? I got it. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
Flip it. You got the coin out, Steven. You went to all the trouble to talk about the coin. You brought it out.
I mean,
like it's here. We're here. Just go ahead and flip it. I'll call it in the air, Steven.
All right. So for those of you who have not tuned in before, welcome. This is the plot in 60 seconds. This is a part of the show where, at the behest of the coin of justice, we flip the coin. Tucker calls it. Wherever it lands, that determines which of us will be recounting the plot of the episode in 60 seconds, or if it lands on Tucker this time, less. Everyone understand? Great.
Yes.
Tucker, call it.
Tails.
And it is Tails.
Fuck yeah, dude.
Fuck yeah, dude. All right, put 60 on the clock, dude.
Oh, shit. I gotta do stuff? Damn.
Yeah, man. You gotta do stuff either way. When it's just the two of us, you gotta do stuff either way.
Damn. 1 minute. Okay, Steven, I'll tell you when it's 30 seconds and when there's 10 seconds left. I will start the timer when you start talking.
So Julianne Moore is on an episode of I Didn't Know I Was Pregnant, and she tries to kill her baby, but then decides, hey, I love my baby instead. And so she doesn't kill the baby, and instead of killing the baby, she raises the baby, and it turns out to be Carrie, and she's an outcast, and no one likes her. She gets her period for the first time in front of all her friends, and they make fun of her. And like, she doesn't have friends though, so they're all throwing tampons and telling her to plug it up. Her friends get in trouble. One of the popular girls gets in trouble. It's disqualified from the prom, so she can't go. So she vows to take revenge. So her and her boyfriend
30
collect a
seconds.
bunch of pig's blood. She also posts a video of it on the internet, and the teacher's like, "Oh, well, I guess if you didn't post the video, we'll just go ahead and let you go to prom," and she won't give up her phone. So she obviously did it. So then they go to the one of the other popular girls convinces her boyfriend to go because she feels bad about what happened. So he takes Carrie and
10
they go.
seconds.
She gets pig's blood dropped on her, but she's also telekinetic and kills everybody, and except for Sue Snell and the teacher, and then she might be alive.
That's time. I don't know how to turn this off. What is happening? There we go. All right.
When are you a Luddite, dude?
Man, I never used the timer. Never.
Apparently not. But yeah, I mean, have you seen Carrie before? Because it's that. With a couple of differences, really.
Hey, you guys, it's Carrie. It's Carrie.
Really, pretty much. This feels very indebted to the De Palma film, like very indebted to the De Palma film.
There are shots and sequences taken directly from it.
Which is why I think it's more of a remake of the De Palma film than it is a readaptation of King's novel. But there are some elements that they put in that De Palma left out from the novel too. So
that's the big problem with this movie is it can't decide. It can't make up its fucking mind if it wants to be a reinterpretation of the novel or an adaptation of the novel or a remake of the De Palma film.
Like the Brian Fuller made-for-TV version, despite being a made-for-TV version that very much is filmed like it was made for TV and cast with largely TV actors, it's fine. It's a little worse than fine, but it's got a lot of actors I really like in it and a couple I really don't like.
It's on the bad side of fine, but it's still fine.
It is. It's got Candace McClure. It's got
got the dude from Officer and a Gentleman, man.
It has the most perfect looking woman ever created by God, Rena Sofer, in it as well. Like she's in there. Like it's got some great performances in it. But at the end of the day, it's still amazing. Patty Clarkson as Margaret White. Fuck yes, please and thank you. Fucking love that woman. Like insane performances, but it's still not great. Like it's like all that in service of this, really? Okay. Like it's filmed like a TV movie. Like all the language that kind of makes the original novel work so well and the original film work so well is just very neutered because it's made for TV. Like so you got to cut all the profanity out of it or most of the good profanity out of it. Like it just kind of all feels very, very neutered, and it's not great. The bad side of fine, as Tucker said. But that feels more like a straight up adaptation of the novel than it does a remake of De Palma's film. And because of that, you can tell what De Palma did and did not take from the original source material. Like Billy has a lot more agency both in this film and in the 2002 version than Travolta's character Billy does in the 76 version.
Yeah, he's a straight up criminal. He's a straight up criminal.
He is. And he strikes me as one of those guys like Home Improvement Boy from The Rage Carrie 2, who's just kind of gotten away with it because his father's one of the influential people in town. That's the impression that I get. But I mean, he knows, I feel like everybody, all the popular kids' parents are lawyers because they all know, this is criminal intent. I know that. This is criminal.
Certainly
this is felonious intent or whatever he says. Yeah.
That's another running gag in the Carrie series that even the Rage Carrie 2 included was the lawyer parent.
Yeah.
Coming to save the day. I like in this one, the bit with the phone that does kind of modernize it a bit, and
I love that
because whether they meant for it or not, the fact that they show a video of her doing anything is reminiscent of the Rage Carrie too.
It is.
Feels like kind of influenced it just a little, maybe it didn't, but to me, as someone who's a big fan of that movie, like I couldn't help but think of the Rage Carrie too. When the
No,
video was up, I was like, oh,
I thought
oh.
of that as well. Like but it's also, I think it I think the Rage Carrie 2 is part of that conversation. Whether or not it was intended by the filmmaker or not, I think it's definitely part of that conversation. But
Yeah.
I think it's also very much touching on the ways that teenagers bully each other now versus the way they would do it in the 70s. Like,
Mm-hmm.
dropping pig's blood on someone is a fucking traumatic thing, absolutely, but to do that in conjunction with playing a video of the most embarrassing moment of their life when they're terrified and naked and victimized on the ground, like
Mm-hmm.
screaming and terror, that's like an extra layer of awful that we're just kind of putting. That's like that just
Mm-hmm.
shit layer on that, like, absolute shit Sunday. Like, it just really drives home how awful these kids really are.
I really liked in this one that Carrie was that she reacted to Tommy getting hit with the bucket,
Mm-hmm. Which is
because it
not
made
in
me feel
any
like
other adaptation of
yeah,
this.
she knew he was just like, she knew that he wasn't part of this. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he's the Jason London of this one, where she kills everybody, but she would be like, no, 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 you go, because you're one of the good ones.
Right. Yeah. I mean, well, he shows up to the party late. He's obviously not a part of it because he's the last one through the door.
Yeah,
Um,
but
and that, and
when
but I mean, the
Tommy
fact
gets
that
hit with the
he's, go ahead.
I was gonna say, when
We're,
Tommy gets hit with the bucket on this one, like, she's pretty distraught about
yeah.
it, and I feel
Well,
like it's the pig's blood,
mm-hmm.
the video, and the fact that the bucket that the pig's blood was in killed Tommy.
That's the impression that I get because no one, very few people pass out with their eyes wide open.
I feel like in every version the bucket kills him, but I mean, it's a bucket.
I know. I know.
I've never understood that. I'm always like, oh man, they knocked Tommy out again. Oh,
Yeah.
actually, no. Yeah, I remember now. He's actually dead
I was
somehow.
gonna
Like,
say in this one, it seems a lot clearer that he dies somehow. Like
oh, I think there's blood. Maybe, is there blood?
here's the thing, you can't tell because there's pig blood all over that stage,
Oh yeah, fair,
and he's
fair.
wearing a white tux and he's also covered in it. Like,
Yeah.
that's the thing, is you can't tell where that blood's coming from. Just, again, that's part of the story, and blood, a very essential part of this storytelling, and kind of King's whole initial storytelling as well. And there's some religious significance to the blood also, which I will
Oh, yeah.
get into later as well. But like, that's all of that I think is really interesting. But no, you're right, it's that triple whammy that really sets her over the edge. Whereas, on top of the shit that she's lived with day in day out for the last however many years she's been at the school,
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, these kids have pretty much been relentless to her. Like, she accidentally hit someone in the back of the head during gym, and she's with a volleyball during gym, and she's terrified. Like, you can see on her face, and they start laughing. And so she starts laughing, and then someone just turns to her and says, "You eat shit." And then it's over. Like, the fun is over for her.
Yeah.
And she's right back to where she is. And then this embarrassing video gets posted of her. It's going viral around the school. She comes in. Carrie White eats shit is like smeared across the lockers. Like, there's a hell that she's enduring every day that all leads up to this moment, to where when she is finally allowed to let her guard down, when she is finally allowed to enjoy herself. And this is, I think, the great tragedy of every adaptation of Carrie, and the great tragedy of Carrie herself, when she finally feels at a point where she can be happy, where she can be relaxed, where she can finally try to figure out what it is to be herself, right? Because that's the
She's
whole thing about,
finally vulnerable. She can
exactly,
finally be vulnerable around
the
people.
whole thing about being a teenager is you're discovering who you are.
Yeah.
And that is itself a painful process, to come into your own and discover who you are. And she's doing that, and she's finally taking those steps. And to be cut down in the worst way at that moment is, I think, such an incredible betrayal for her, that she lashes out. And I mentioned this yesterday on the Rage Carrie too. Brett mentioned his frustration with the fact that in every adaptation, quote, Carrie has to die.
Mm-hmm.
And I said that I saw her as a tragic figure on par with like the Frankenstein's monster, or the creature from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, in that the real monster is not Carrie. Carrie's just as much a victim as everyone else. The real monster is the one that created her, in the same way that Victor Frankenstein is the monster of Frankenstein. Margaret White is the real and also the bullies. Those are the real monsters of Carrie.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact she just happens to be the one with the supernatural gift, with the supernatural ability. So she's the one that gets painted as the monster when in fact she is just the tragic figure that everything is put upon.
Look, she doesn't, I mean, she has a little bit of control over her powers, but she has just started kind of fucking with them
Right.
in this movie. So you put someone through that kind of traumatic experience, I don't even know if they're trying to murder everyone. You know what I mean?
I would say that for most other adaptations of Carrie, but I don't know if I can say that for this one, because if you look at and this again, it's all in performance. It's the one part of CGM's performance that I don't like is she seems to, by the end of it, she seems to be enjoying it. Like there's some malice to that performance, and it, like, I don't know that I like that from Carrie,
I don't know.
because
I mean, with if that amount of trauma, you kind of snap. You would do things that you wouldn't normally do. You would behave in ways you wouldn't normally. And I think that when you see her post all of her fucking murder spree,
right.
she doesn't seem like she's very happy with herself. Like she seems
Mm-mm.
really, really upset. And I
Yeah.
have to imagine that some of that is because she just killed a shit ton of people.
Right. Right.
I'm saying you do shit when you're upset that you don't like afterwards. You're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And
I
of course,
mean,
this is on a huge scale,
right.
but it's the
Well,
same kind of thing, I feel like.
and I found, and again, this for our patrons, you know that I, within the past few weeks, have watched, or maybe you don't, because I don't know if that was in the episode that Tucker didn't post or not. But I had recently watched The Act, the Hulu series The Act, with Patty Arquette and Joey King,
Mhm.
about Gypsy Rose Blanchard. And that, I was thinking a lot about that as I've been watching Carrie, because it's at least not in the actual like particulars of the situation, but in how it all kind of culminates in the death of the mother figure, very much so. Like there's this trauma that's been just kind of dumped on this child for the entirety of her life. And when she finally has the means and the agency to push against it, it ends in very horrific ways. Um, and I guess in that one way only, those stories are very similar. But I couldn't help but start to draw that comparison. Really,
What did you think about her mom's death? Because the TV movie version is the only one that does it like the book.
right? Where she like
They
stops her heart.
stops her heart, and
Yeah,
I think in a book that plays really, really well.
I agree.
But
In the
I wish they
Yeah,
could have pulled it off in this one because it just seemed so derivative and the performances were so good. Was still taking me out of it. I was like, this is wow, you can't like come on, like don't do the same exact thing.
you're kind
Come
of building
on.
to that though. Like the whole movie,
I
and we
know.
see more of it in this one than we do in any other adaptation. Carrie becoming adept at using her powers. Like we don't
Mhm.
see it in any other adaptation, but we start to see her like becoming aware of them. The part of
She
where
searches
she's
magic powers on
right.
Google.
Well, I mean, in the original, it's Carrie going through a library index and pulling out the card for miracles. So it's
Yeah,
not
well, even in the
that
Rage Carrie
different.
too, like she was at the library because we still weren't like in modern internet times.
Right, right. Internet was still at fledgling. Like, is this valuable for research? Was still very much a part of the conversation in '99.
Yeah. Hmm.
I remember actually being told in high school that I could not use the internet as a source for research papers. So yeah, it was that very much that era. Um, but the like she, and then the scene in her room where she's levitating the books and like making like, so we're building to this moment,
Which
And
kind of
we
looks,
see
I really hated how that looked.
same because it was all CGI and it
Because,
fucking sucked.
well, and instead of like using the CGI to make it look realistic, they just CGI'd some books on strings.
Hmm.
Like, like they didn't make it any better than the
Yeah,
practical effect would have looked.
they did the same thing when she broke the mirror and the pieces are in the sink. Like, and the pieces start to kind of float up a little bit. I'm like, this looks so shitty right now. Like,
It's like
this is
if it,
so
it
bad.
and it would be so easy to do. Like
Hmm.
if it looks worse than it would be look practically, and practically would probably be easier than to CGI it. What the fuck are
Yeah.
you doing?
Right. Well, it's not the thing is it's not easier on the day. It's not easier in the room. In the room, it's easier for an actor to just like look around in awe at all the books that are flying everywhere. Um, but it's harder in post production. So we're just shoving that all off till later, and that's I think where
Yeah.
Hollywood starts to get into a problem.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
but we see a little bit of her using those powers earlier. Like we see her with the wires at the dance, like when she electrocutes everybody and starts walking on air. And then we see her with the car when she fucking straight up murders Chris. Like we see her like lift the car in the air and then let it drive into the gas station. Like we see
Mhm.
all of those things play out. But I think it's been building to this moment with her and her mom. Um, to where you see every sharp object in the house just come out and after she's been stabbed by her mother when
Mhm.
she's really just seeking
She's kind of
comfort.
defending herself
I
at
mean,
that point too. Like
she's
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 trying to stab her in the face.
right. Like she is a child, a vulnerable child who has been hurt and is in pain and needs the love of a parent. And instead, her mother stabs her in the back, literally stabs her in the
Literally
back.
stabs her in the back. Like
And so there is
it's
this like,
on it's so on the nose, it's still kind of on my nose. Like I'm trying to
right.
get it off a little
It's
bit.
it's
It's
been there the
still
whole
on
time, and
there.
I've been meaning to say something, and I just haven't been able to work myself up to
I'm
it. So
trying, man.
I'm
I'm
glad you
working on
brought it
it.
up. But like, like they kind of like there's this burst of, for lack of a better word, rage, and they kind of like she blasts them apart, and then her mother comes chasing her down the stairs with this giant ass fucking butcher's knife, and in her, again, as a means of defending herself, all the sharp objects in the house come and like convert and like form a circle or a semicircle around her mother. And like the thing I appreciated about it, and again, I agree, it does feel kind of derivative. It's like, well, this feels like something out of X-Men. Um, but the thing I appreciate about it, and again, it's overwrought, but I always appreciate it, is that her mother ends up in the crucifix pose. Like she's got straight up stigmata going on. And again, I
Yeah.
as a religious person, I can appreciate that, particularly given the focus of this character. And one thing I will say about Julianne Moore, I think she's almost as good as Piper Laurie in this role. Like, I think she makes this character
I
so
agree.
fucking terrifying. Like, and
I
I look,
agree.
I love Patty Clarkson. I love Piper Laurie. Like, they both do an incredible job. I think Julianne Moore, this is the year before she finally wins her Oscar for Still Alice. But like, she was one of those actors who was always in that conversation for a long time.
She's she's the most unsettling of all the
Yes.
Carrie's moms. Like she's the one that really kind of makes my skin crawl.
And I think because of the reason for that, at least for me, it is because it feels very grounded in a very real kind of person. Like Piper Laurie is playing everything very big, very broad. And I think that's why Piper Laurie thought the original Carrie was a dark comedy. She's like, I can't be going this big and it not be a comedy.
But it
Like,
works because the lady is insane.
exactly. But Julianne Moore's portrayal is rooted in like, and I think Patty Clarkson does this as well, but on a much smaller scale because TV. But
Yeah.
like Julianne Moore's character is rooted in such a real place. Like the
It's very
more
grounded, and that's what makes it scary
agreed,
too. Is
agreed.
because she is just a textbook fucking sociopath.
You believe
And
that
she's
people like her
extremely
exist in this
religious.
world.
You
Yes.
see her do the things where she'll, give Carrie a little bit of praise and give her a little bit of love, and then immediately just start treating her like a piece of shit and hopping back
Mm-hmm.
and forth and
Yep.
like pushing her and pulling her, and it's fucked up, dude. really good in this movie.
And that is, again, it feels like a very real observation of religious fundamentalism, which is on its face all about control. Like that is
Yeah.
what religious fundamentalism is, and it stems from this idea. What most fundamentalist doctrine comes down to is we're the right way, everyone else is the wrong way, and it's because we understand this one particular section of it better than anyone else does. And that's I mean, when you come to a church whose entire theology is based on a specific interpretation of a specific notion, run. I guess is my as someone who has studied this, lived it, and taught it for so many years, run, fucking run. I mean, like she seems a fundamentalist on par with like the snake handlers in Appalachia. You know about the snake handlers,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, she's definitely out there in the outer reaches
Mm-hmm.
of the faith,
I
the
mean, for
outliers,
those of you not
the
familiar with the snake
really, really,
handlers,
really, really Baptist.
right? Oh God. And see, that's the thing is, I think the smartest thing that these adaptations do, and I don't know if I actually looked up her character biography on the Carrie wiki, and I didn't see anything about a specific religious affiliation. I think that's fucking smart because I think most people can look at her and go, well, she's crazy. She's on the fringe of the fringe. Like she's so far out there. She doesn't even subscribe to a specific affiliation. And
Oh, she don't
by
even go to church, man. She
by
don't even go to
pinning
church.
one because all the churches are too, my guess is too liberal, too permissive.
They forced her to stop homeschooling Carrie.
Yeah.
It's that bad. They don't do that to
Yeah.
anybody.
No,
It's that bad.
it is. There's a, I mean, and you get this a lot. I guess this is Steven's Christianity corner. Welcome.
Hey, here we are.
We
Dusting the corner off for a
I
minute.
knew we were going
It's
to
not
come back
dusting.
here. But like that kind of exists within a lot of these very restrictive fun. And again, I grew up in a very conservative Christian denomination.
What?
I would say the part of the country that I lived in was one of the more conservative spots for this particular denomination historically.
Oh, it is the
Um,
buckle of the Bible Belt, Stephen.
well, look, the church that I went to was a little more permissive than most, but when we would go to like the big district events, like the big camp meetings or whatever, like everybody else there would be in three-piece suits. Women would not wear jewelry or makeup. All the hair was a bun or a beehive. The higher the hair, the closer to God, I guess, was the logic.
Beehives are
No
tight.
skin, no skin was showing except for like your face and your hands, and that's it. Like it was just insanely restricted. And I remember as I was a kid and going to certain events, there was an older lady who was at all these events, and she would just complain about, well, the Lord keeps laying on my heart about modest dressing for these girls running around in these jeans and these pants.
Can
And
you
I'm
imagine
like,
being that person? Can you imagine being
right?
that fucking person? Like, what the fuck? Like, you don't have anything else to worry about but
And
that.
her husband would have to like apologize for her every time. Like
Come
it
on,
happened
dude.
every time. So I mean, I was in a more conservative space than most. My parents were not that. My parents are conservative, but they were not never that conservative. Like
No.
my dad took us to a movie despite being on the church board. Like we couldn't go see
All right,
movies
I'm
in
not gonna. I
theaters.
won't tell the church board, Stephen.
He's not on the church board anymore. It's okay.
Oh, okay.
And I don't. He doesn't even go to that denomination anymore. So we're good.
Oh,
Um,
word.
word. But like we would go but when we went, and the first movie I ever saw in theaters was Prancer, with Sam Elliott
Hey,
and Cloris Leachman and Abe Vigoda,
and a reindeer.
and a reindeer named Prancer. But when on our way there, like my parents didn't tell us where we were going until we were halfway there, and then my dad was like, "No, you cannot tell anybody at church, anybody at school, because we went to the school at a church in this denomination as well.
Yeah.
You can't tell anybody that we saw this movie. You cannot tell anybody." And we didn't. We didn't tell anybody because we wanted to be able to see movies in theaters again because it was really cool. But like that's how conservative this group was. And I was a part of that denomination until my 20s, honestly. When I was a youth pastor, I was a youth pastor in that denomination. Like but I was a part of more progressive churches within that denomination until ultimately I broke off and started going to like independent church, not independent Christian churches, because independent Christian churches still believe that you have to be like immersion baptized in order for baptism to count.
Whoa.
And again, that's kind of one of those like very specific interpretations that the entire salvation rests on. And I'm like, that's dangerous. Beware of that.
Yo,
Like,
if the priest is not, or if the pastor's not using a squirt gun, I'm not getting baptized. Sorry, I'm out.
I'm
Deal
sure
breaker.
there are pastors that do. I'm sure there, you know, Tucker,
Super soaker me,
I'm
Rev.
sure there's a pastor out there who would baptize you even if it meant you got to drink from the fire hose.
Yes, dude. I did find the marble in the oatmeal. If that matters at all.
Well, you know, as Jesus does say, blessed is he who finds the marble in the oatmeal, for he shall drink from the fire hose. So
That's one of the most famous passages
one of
from
the
the
most
entire Bible.
famous. Yeah. It's from the book of the ultra high frequency.
That's the one.
That's the one.
Yes,
Um,
my favorite.
but and again, like I think it's smart that King doesn't subscribe a specific like religious background, because her what I think becomes clear over the course of the film and over the course of the story is that her religious ideology is not based in anything biblical. Like Carrie, I think at one point in this movie even says that's not even in the Bible. Like the raven was sin. There's no raven. The only raven that I can think of off the top of my head that's mentioned in the Bible is the one that um Noah sends off the ark.
Doesn't
He
seem very sinful to me.
Right. And Eve was weak, which again is a part of a very specific interpretation, but nowhere are those three words put together
You
anywhere
don't
in the
just throw
Bible.
that. You don't just throw that around in any context. I mean, you can't. You don't
Right.
just take things out of context and be like, "Nope, it works. I'm gonna make it work for this."
But no,
Fuck
but
you,
see,
it works.
that's very much what religious fundamentalism does though, is they have a
Yeah, dude.
very restrictive, limited view of the world, and they have to bend the rest of scripture to fit that worldview. I think even evangelicals, excuse me, fucking do this. Like I was watching a TikTok earlier today from Dan McClellan, who is a really incredible Bible scholar, who is talking about like the ways that the original text depicts God, and how we land on one interpretation based on kind of our priority throughout history. Like we land on a more Greek idea of the personage of God. And so we have to like revise and
With the
negate.
robe and the beard, right? The toga and the
Dude, no, it gets so much fucking
so
deeper
Greek,
than
right?
that. Like it gets like the idea that God is this kind of unknowable, holy, unseeable figure, when
Mm.
in the past in scripture you see characters literally coming face to face with corporeal God in a physical corporeal form. And then when you get into the more Greek ideology with the idea of like God being spirit, or psyche in Greek, like you have to kind of retcon that as those ideas become more prevalent within the Greek translations of the Old and New Testaments. You kind of have to explain away some of those ancient occurrences to be something else, or to be not really God. But again, that's very much an example of the kind of overtime work that the Christian brain is willing to do to justify the stuff that they believe. And they do it all the time. They don't recognize that they're doing it, but it's absolutely a part of the conversation. It's a part of the process. And I mean, as someone who taught it, I got very good at explaining some of those things away. It's something that I'm becoming more cognizant of as I get older, the
Oh
ways
yeah.
in which that scripture is in, and necessarily needs to be in conversation with ourself, with itself rather, and the way we need to be in conversation with it. So it's a much more dynamic thing. So to all of that to say, when we get to the character, I think of Margaret White, keeping her ideology vague but very restrictive is really helpful here. Like she is radicalized. Um, and I think that Julianne Moore plays that so well that we can think of the most like adamant Bible thumper that we've ever encountered, and then dial that person up to 11, and we start to get close to where Julianne Moore's coming with this particular characterization of Margaret White, or with who Margaret White is as a character at all. Like, that's really, I think, a really important part of what makes that character work, is how well grounded she is without being so well grounded that we're subscribing a particular ideology to her, because there is no ideology that fits. I'm not sure what King's original like inspiration for that character was, but I think making Carrie the product of that environment as part of one of these ultra conservative, ultra fundamentalist families, in my mind, that gives her an extra layer of isolation, that gives her an extra layer of otherness, gives her another reason to be othered by her classmates, to the extent that she is this outcast in every conceivable way. And it really, again, victimizes her even more, because this was not a choice she made. This was the faith that she was, quote unquote, born into. Like, her mother thought that marital, I mean, we get the sense that Carrie was conceived out of marital rape, which is fucking wrong. But like, that was the only time that that character had ever had sex, like, period, through the entirety of her life. And because even the thought of sex was in and of itself sinful in her mind. And I've
But
heard
how are
of
you
people
supposed to
like
get
that.
babies, though?
I've heard of people that believe that way, though. That's not an unheard of thing. Like,
But that
I have,
seems like such an easy counter argument. How do we keep the population going?
how do we fulfill God's first command to be fruitful and increase in number, right? Like,
Yeah, are we reading the same book? Like, what's going on, man?
I think that's what it ultimately comes down to with a lot of these fundamentalist ideologies, is we're not, because we're reading it through very different lenses. And what fundamentalism ultimately is about is control. It's about controlling a group of the population or a group of people by, kind of dangling this carrot in front of them, when I think true religion, as it is described throughout scripture, is about helping other people, is about loving unconditionally, and not, only loving people who vote the same way that you do, or who look the same way you do, or who go to the same kind of church that you go to. We all tend to be very good at drawing lines and drawing distinctions, and that, I don't think, is what true religion is, or what it looks like, biblically speaking, at least, from the book that I'm reading. So
Yeah.
I don't know, chew on that, I guess. Like, I think by and large people tend to do it wrong, because we let ourselves get in the way. So
Let me ask you something, Steven.
yeah,
You a King James guy, or you a New International Version guy? What's
I'm a
your...
New American Standard guy.
Oh, whoa, coming in with the wild card. Okay,
Yeah.
nice.
I also like the not no, I won't say New King James. That's not it. New Revised Standard's another really good one.
Now, when you did your education on
Mhm.
theology and philosophy,
Yeah.
did
As
you
part of this
study?
denomination that I was talking about too, by the way, that's where my
Did you
schooling comes from.
study about the differences between the translations? Was that part of the curriculum at all?
I did more than that. I was a Greek minor.
Fuck
I
yes,
I
dude.
minored in Koine Greek, which is to say the
So
common Greek, or the Greek of the New Testament. Like, that was I took a minor in that. Like, I took
speak
uh
some Greek, Stephen.
here's the thing, I don't speak it. Koine
I can
Koine
only read it. Like,
no, but here's the thing. Koine was a spoken tongue, but it was
yeah.
written as it was spoken. So,
A word.
but Koine Greek, like, it's like trying to read Old English today. Like, it
Hmm.
doesn't make much sense to us today, because modern Greek, even classic Greek, like Homer's Iliad, is a very different kind of Greek than the Koine that they were speaking during the first century. Like, it's a very different kind of, like, I tried for one of my Greek classes to translate some of the Iliad, and it was really, really challenging and very difficult, because there was a lot of disconnect between the resources that I had available for Koine and the resources that would have been required for classical. Like
And
it's a
it's technically a poem too, so like you have to take that into account. It's not going to That's wild. I'll bet that was hard.
and I think but and again, part of what makes the work of the translator so different is there are many different ways to say similar ideas. And
Mhm.
so the translators take liberties. And then the translators who translate those translations take liberties. And so on and so forth. So what we're
It's
getting
like
with
a
every
game of
new
telephone, you know?
is exactly like the example that our one of the examples that our professor gave us, because one of the things he said is it was written to be spoken, and so like it's basically a giant run-on sentence with all capital letters. There's no spaces or punctuation or anything.
Mm.
And so he like, with that in mind, the sentence is GODISNOWHERE. How do we translate that? It can be God is now here, or it could be God is nowhere.
Mhm.
And so, based on the context of what it is we're translating, the context, that's again and a way to illustrate that context matters. What is the context, and how does the context help us understand how we should interpret what this says and what this is supposed to say, what the original authorial intent behind this really is? And all of, I mean, that's, now we're talking hermeneutics, which is its own fucking thing.
What's
But
that?
like,
I want to know about this. What is it?
it
That's a
hermeneutics,
cool word. Say it a
it
couple more
is
times.
hermeneutics, hermeneutics, hermeneutics,
Oh,
hermeneutics, 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 hermeneutics.
hermeneutics.
There it is. It's basically like interpretation, translation. Like it. I
That
had to
sounds
take.
so
I
interesting,
was
dude.
required for my degree. I had to take a class
Were
in
you
biblical
freaking
hermeneutics.
out because it was so fun, or was it like really hard and you were freaking out because it was a lot of pressure?
It was. It
But it was
was.
also rad, though, right?
It. It had its moments.
Oh yeah, dude.
It was the professor was not the most engaging professor, but he was very
That just sounds like
knowledgeable.
such a fun subject, like such an interesting thing to learn
We
about.
had to, that semester I had to write 3 exegesis papers. Exegesis, I
Word?
think I've talked about on this podcast before. I definitely talked about
What's
it on
that?
our Oops All Christianity corner on Kirk Cameron's Saving Christmas.
Well,
Um,
remind me. I tried to check out during that one because that movie sucks so bad.
it sucked really bad. Exegesis is
I'm still
it
recovering.
interpreting scripture by pulling the meaning out of the text, trying to figure out what it is the author's trying to say and extrapolating meaning based on that. And you can look at it from a number of factors: the language they use, the actual historicity, who the audience is, who the author is, the the specifics of that place at that time, like where in the world is it being written, at what time. All of those things have a bearing on the meaning of the text. We talk about that a lot with regard to film. I think all art, that becomes an essential part of the conversation.
Hmm.
Like, to understand how revolutionary a movie like Citizen Kane is, you have to understand what film was like before and after Citizen Kane. Like
Hmm.
what it is, what Citizen Kane did that no other film before it had done, where it's drawing its influences from, and then how film changes as a result after it. And
It's
you can
like
kind of
TV before Twin Peaks and after,
exactly, exactly,
or
very
like
much so.
something like Breaking Bad. You know, you have these
Yes.
milestones where TV just changes forever.
Exactly. And that, so the when of it is an important part of that context. The
Hmm.
where of it is an important part of that context. So all of
And
these
that's what
things
I always.
matter in interpreting script. So again, the idea is that we're pulling the meaning out of the text.
Hmm.
The opposite of that is eisegesis, wherein we're reading a text and putting our own meaning onto the text, like, which is very much what fundamentalism becomes about. It's this idea of, this is what this means because this is what applies to me right now, and this is what I think of when I read it. Therefore this has to be my understanding of this text, and therefore, because the Bible is true, ultimately true for everybody, it needs to be the way everybody interprets this text, and if you're not, then you're wrong.
Which is wild.
But
The whole
that's
last three sentences you said, that's wild.
correct.
It's
But
like it's just a circle because like you're.
yes, that's how you get
Wow,
there though, dude.
that's wild.
And then
That's so
I was
interesting.
actually talking to one of our fans on Insta the other day, Norvin Klein. Hey Norvin, he'll get to this
Hi.
episode in like a month. But I was talking to him on Instagram the other day, and we were talking about He is a patron and a really big fan of the Oops All Christianity Corner episodes. He's like, I don't believe in any of this stuff, but I find it really fascinating.
Hey, that's where I'm at, man. That's why I like doing them.
Right. And I mentioned that not everyone is a fan, not everyone likes it when I do this shit. And he was just like, that strikes me as kind of odd. I was like, open and closed mindedness, it falls on both sides. Like, people who do believe in Christianity can be very close minded to people that don't. People that don't can be very close minded to people that do. Like, open and closed mindedness does not need a religious affiliation. Everyone can be open and closed minded to something. But I think we're able to learn more when we're open to the conversation, when we're open to meeting at the table and checking out the reasons why we believe differently. But I think so few people are willing to do that. And I think that's why fundamentalism exists in all of its forms, is because there's no willingness to budge on something like that. Like, the idea is that if this thing is true, then I can't waver on any point of it, because if I do, then it all comes crashing down. Are you familiar with the Creation Museum and Ken Ham and Answers in Genesis and all that?
I've heard about the Creation Museum.
It's run by this dude named Ken Ham, who is also like responsible for this website called Answers in Genesis. Basically, short Earth or young Earth creationism, the idea that everything that exists was created within the span of like 10,000 years max.
Yeah.
Everything as it exists now within 10,000 years. And it, rejects the notion of evolution in favor of a, like a more pointed, fast-tracked creation, etc., based on a literal reading of Genesis 1. And I have literally heard people that subscribe to this philosophy say out loud that if we start to
In
question
public.
in public to people that presumably respected their opinions on things, that if we don't believe this truth, that Genesis 1 literally happened exactly as written, then basically the rest of scripture doesn't matter, and Jesus didn't die for our sins. It's a very much a baby with the bathwater kind of thinking that used to infuriate me as a someone who actually took this shit seriously, still does, but
That
like
is
someone who actually like
maddening.
engages with this on a serious, because it completely destroys any conversation. Like, no, you have to see it my way or we can't talk. Like, you have to
That's
meet me
just
on my terms or there's no conversation. And like, there's no wiggle room there. And that's fundamentalism. At its core, that is fundamentalism. It is a
and that's
rooted stick in the sand. I'm not budging.
yeah.
I am the tree planted by the water that cannot be moved, and nothing you say or do will convince me that I'm wrong.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's why I
fucked
think it's
up.
so fucking scary to see the way that Julianne Moore plays Margaret White, because she is absolutely that kind of thinker, that kind of person, the kind of person who can rationalize murdering their own child because she believes it's what God wants her to do in that moment.
So you think she stopped herself? Because I feel like you can kind of interpret that moment in two ways. You can interpret it that she stopped herself, like she stopped short of it and then reconsidered, or maybe maybe that's telekinesis, Kyle. You know?
Well, I think at the beginning she stops herself, like with the scissors, like at the very beginning of the film where she
No, I'm
accidentally
I'm
gives birth. No,
completely talking about the birth. I know
oh, at the
later in the
birth.
film that's the telekinesis. I'm just saying you could interpret that as the baby stopping her.
I don't think so, because when we revisit
I
that
think you
later in the
could.
film, she says, I hope they're okay. Um, Later in the film, when they're on the stairs and she's getting ready to stab her again, she said, God, let me keep my baby. She said, I saw you and I loved you. And so my thinking is that she stopped herself, and now in this moment regrets that she made that decision in the
Yes,
first place.
but I feel like also what you just said that could be interpreted as before she even knew about the telekinesis stuff, maybe that was God stopping her to show her that, I feel like that could be something that would enter her mind. I'm
Potentially.
saying in interpreting it that way is not far-fetched, is
Right.
what I'm saying.
Given what movie it is, I agree.
Hmm.
absolutely. And
And I
given, I
was kind
think
of thought that was interesting about that whole scene because you don't get that scene in the original. You don't get the birth scene.
this is, I think, the only, and I could be wrong, I don't think this scene is in the book either. I think this is the only place we get this scene.
Yeah.
Like, I
And it
think
only
the
works, the interpretation that I'm talking about only works if you're familiar with the other adaptations, because if you
right,
go into this completely blind, your interpretation is, oh, she just couldn't do it.
right.
But if you know Carrie, there's this little thing in the back of your mind. You're like, what if the baby like stopped her? Like, probably not, but what if? Like,
Well, and that's another thing is that I think gets muddied across other adaptations of this is when does this start for Carrie? When do these
yeah,
abilities kick in? Because my impression has always been, or had been, at least with the first adaptation, and what I understood about the book is that it started at puberty. Like, she didn't really start to exhibit these until she got her period, and then
well,
that's when the curse started.
she was no in the book and in the TV version. The first time they show her using her powers is when she sees the neighbor lady. And
Okay,
then her
okay.
mom comes out, and she's
The
a little girl when
rocks.
that happens, and she brings the rocks from the sky.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. Okay.
So it's kind of ambiguous, at least if in the book and in the TV adaptation.
I mean, in the rage, we get it from her as a young
Yeah,
girl, like running
she
through the
is.
house and the doors slamming and the spoon
I love
twirling.
that big
Yeah,
long shot of that. That's great.
it's a good shot.
And you know
But
what Julianne Moore reminds me of, the lady that plays Rachel's mom in the Rage Carrie 2.
mhm,
She's not anywhere near as like awful as Julianne Moore is playing this woman,
no,
but there is a little bit of it. Whenever I see Julianne Moore's performance, I think of the beginning of Carrie, or not Carrie, at the beginning of the Rage Carrie 2, when little tiny Rachel comes up and she's like, "Let's just play, let's go do something," and she just smacks her with the paintbrush.
which
That's a
again,
Julianne Moore, Carrie's mom kind of thing to do.
that I thought, and I didn't mention this on the episode that we recorded yesterday that's coming out on Sunday, but that it felt very much like an allusion to the original film with the blood, like the pig's blood, as you
Hmm.
get the like
Oh yeah, I had never considered that.
the red on the face, just like
Yeah,
kind of drawing our attention to this is our Carrie analog for this movie.
yeah, that's why I hadn't considered that. But yeah, Julianne Moore is terrifying in this
She is.
movie.
I mean, she even
She
gets a
makes me
jump scare
uncomfortable
movement when
every
Carrie
time
first
she's
comes back.
on. Oh,
We're
sorry,
like
go ahead.
we're completely talking
We
over each other
really
about
are.
two
We don't
completely
know what
different
we're doing.
things. We don't. We're it's late, guys. She gets a fucking jump scare moment like when Carrie comes back from the prom and her mom is broken out of the closet, the
Oh
quote
yeah,
unquote
when
prayer closet,
she
and just
does
like,
a like paranoid or paranoid paranormal activity kind of
yeah, just
through the background.
skitters across the background. I'm like,
It's
holy
good
shit, that's
because,
so terrifying.
and not because they did it that way, but because that character is terrifying. Every time she's on screen,
Hmm.
I am uncomfortable. I am scared for Carrie,
Right.
for her mental health and
Hmm.
for her physical health whenever
Yep.
this woman is around. And like, it's just like at the beginning of the movie when she's in the principal's office and they're like, "Yo, fuck, hey Cassie, like
Right. Hey,
we gotta
Casey,
call your mom," and she's like, are you sure, man, because that would
maybe we
really
don't
suck.
do
And
that.
then that's you. Once you meet her mom, that's you the rest of the movie. Whenever
Yeah.
her mom is there, you're like, oh fuck.
Hmm. And I don't get that with Piper Laurie. I don't get that with Patty Clarkson. I absolutely
No.
get that with Julianne Moore. Because, and again, it's a performance thing, but I think she's making the right choices
I agree.
to really sell that. Which is again why I think the performances in this movie are probably my favorite part of this movie.
The performances, every performance in this movie that I can think of, I can't think of any that weren't awesome. They're really what makes this, for me, uneven movie an actual good film.
Mm,
Without these performances, this movie would be fine.
sure.
Parts of it would be fine, but the fact that everybody's selling it so fucking hard, it's
Right.
easy to overlook the stuff that does not work in this movie, which is about, for me, half of this movie.
And not selling it hard in a way that like reeks of try hard, like we're trying,
No, it's
but
genuine.
like
I believe it. I believe all the
yeah,
performances in this movie.
yeah, they're selling it hard to the extent that you believe it, like they're actually connecting. And it I think that is what elevates this movie, because I mean, the script is fine. Again, in so many
Okay.
moments, it's just a boilerplate remake of Carrie. Like, did we? It. I read a review on Letterboxd that I kind of agreed with. The person said, I can't think of another reason why this exists other than money. And
Yeah.
I get it. Like, it feels on that level very Craven, but for the performances, I think if we'd done something more with the cyberbullying angle, I think that could have really connected. That could have really been something, but we don't ever really do that. We
Well,
kind of
it's because I feel
hand
like they
wave that
have
away,
they have one foot in the original, like cemented in the original. And that's why
much like a fundamentalist would.
despite how effective it is, that's why uh, Carrie and her mother and their house and everything they own and their vehicle just seem so out of place because
Right.
they've got that one foot back there that they can't just seem to bring it on up into this other
Mhm.
movie.
Whereas honestly, like they should be kind of like a Neo, or maybe like a slightly more locked in and unhinged version of like the Duggars, really.
Mhm.
Because that's kind of the face of Christian fundamentalism these days, or the fucking Duggar family. Like that should be again on a much smaller scale, because you know there's only the one kid as opposed to like 50, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, dude.
I mean, if we do get this updated version with Hunter Schafer, that they've been discussing since October. I don't know if they're still discussing it. I would be interested to see it again. It feels like we get an adaptation of this character and this story about once a decade, and if this is the one that we get for this decade, then I'm into it. Like I like Hunter Schafer. I think she's really good on Euphoria. Is pretty much all I've seen her in. But she's also in the new Hunger Games movie that came out last year that I still haven't seen.
Yeah, I don't know who
Um,
that is at all.
you should watch Euphoria, dude. I think you'd probably dig it.
I don't think
Either that or it would infuriate you. I don't know which, but
that's probably the latter. I've seen trailers and stuff. I've watched enough stuff on HBO that I I, I get what it's about.
yeah. I mean, but
And like,
I think that's another one where I think the performances and the writing are both really solid.
word.
So yeah, I would totally be into a Carrie remake. For it's not listed on her upcoming films, so I think it might still be in the conversation stage. But maybe the 2020s is the first decade that we don't get a Carrie adaptation. I don't know.
Maybe I heard they're wanting to do a miniseries, right?
I think that's what that article said. Yeah, I don't remember. It's been a
Uh,
couple days since I read it, but yeah,
a few. Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just thinking about some of the really cool parts about this movie. I
like
got
go
kind of
off, man,
hypnotized.
go off. Let's
There's
talk.
a
What
lot
do you
of
got?
cool stuff in this movie. Like I say, the performances, the
Mm-hmm.
opening scene.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, look, you're gonna know because I've complained about so much stuff in this movie. By the time this podcast is over, you'll know what I liked about the movie because it's the stuff I didn't mention. And
Mm.
something I did not like, something I
Mm.
really, really loathed
Mm.
more than the epilogue to the Rage Carrie 2, which as much as I love that movie, that's fucking stupid.
Sure.
In this movie, it's the and in ah okay, cool. I guess we just ended a Carrie movie. Did we? Did we actually end a Carrie movie that way?
Right. Yeah.
Fucking what?
And again, it's almost like we can
Oh
I
my
guess we
god.
can presumably infer that she might not be as dead as we thought, because we didn't actually see her get crushed
It
under the
doesn't infer
house.
anything, dude. It's bullshit. Like
Yeah.
that whole final sequence is bullshit.
It
After Carrie dies, it's bullshit till the credits.
it's basically our we're trying to do the original She's Not Dead ending without actually doing the original She's Not Dead ending.
I feel like they gave up. They just threw in the towel. They were like, "Look, we're not gonna beat the De Palma scare. That even though no matter how many times I watched the original Carrie, I still jump 10 foot out of my seat when her arm comes out of the ground, dude.
Yeah.
Every fucking time. I think they just conceded. They were like, "Look, we're not gonna beat that. So like, fucking whatever. The rest of this movie was pretty all right. Like, who gives a shit?"
Apparently they did originally. There is an alternate ending, and it is the ending of the original film. Like, Sue comes, puts flowers on the grave,
I did
Carrie's
read
hand
that, and
pops out.
it was
Yeah.
the test audiences that decided.
Yeah, because and again, it just, I get why they say that, because it's the same ending as the movie. Like, can we do something different? Like,
I don't know.
and I mean, it's a King adaptation. If you want to
Can she
find a
come
way to
up
do
and
this,
spit a snake out
no,
into Sue Snell's mouth?
God no, God no. Let's not do that at all, please. What a terrible idea you just had. Why
We've got some
anyone
stock
would decide?
footage of it if you want to use it.
Oh, you know what? You know what they
It
should
looks
have done?
great.
They should have just had her become like desiccated and then shatter like glass.
Yes, that would have been even better.
God,
For no reason. Who
for
knows why?
no
Who knows
reason.
why?
No,
Who knows
yeah,
why? I
and
guess
I
it was
mean,
a dream.
with the exception of the original film, I think the epilogues to these Carrie adaptations tend to
They
be some
fail
of the weaker
every
moments.
time. You know, and you're waiting for it too. You're like, all right, that wasn't that bad, but well, here it goes. Here we fucking. That's how I feel in
Like,
the Raids Carry too. Every time I watch it, I'm like, yeah, that was fucking rad.
like
Oh
if we
fuck, this part's coming. Like, oh man.
if we'd maybe left it at just like the ground kind of shaking and maybe a crack starting to form at the base of the grave, that would have been something ominous. But when we do the shatter, we do the scream, and it's just kind of like, sometimes less is more.
That's
Um,
true.
and I think that could have been better for this particular adaptation that has really not gone that hard up to this point. To suddenly go that hard that quickly right at the end just feels off.
It is nice to see the full circle on Carrie White Burns in Hell,
Mm-hmm.
because you got Carrie White Burns in Hell in the original,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have Venkman Burn in Hell in Ghostbusters. Then you have Clerks Burn in Hell
Right.
in the Clerks animated series, and now
Right.
here we are. We're
Back
right back at the beginning, and
again.
it is a
Tag team
beautiful circle.
back again.
Everything in that circle I appreciate. That's your hyper specific letterbox
Letterbox
list, Steven.
list. Yeah.
That's the one right there.
Not the 1996 fourth movies and long running franchises that put their villains in the middle of space.
That's a good one too.
Okay. Because
But
that
not
was one I thought
quite
of last
as
time.
like hyper specific
Yeah.
as contains the phrase
Burn in
character
hell.
burns in hell or burn in hell
Right.
written somewhere in red.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it also ties back to the Carrie White eat shit graffiti that we see earlier. Like, that even in death, she can't get away from the bullying. Like, it just, I think, compounds her tragic nature as a character. They could have used a more deft touch on the ending. They didn't have to and I think that's part of the problem with movies that have those iconic endings, like the original Friday the 13th or the original Nightmare on Elm Street, the original Carrie, that if you're trying to remake or revisit them, you feel on some level compelled to go back to an ending like that, to try to match or to try to one up, or if not match, that level of iconography for the ending. And it's not possible. Like, you have to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at the point where I don't even know how King ended his original novel, because I've never read it, A, but B, every adaptation is ended differently than his novel.
She do be dying at the end of the novel, though.
Oh, that I do know. That at
She
least
be
I
dying.
know. But again,
Yeah, and she trashes the whole town in that.
but
Like,
I think because
nukes
this
the
is,
town.
but she's also telepathic in that one too. So she's like broadcasting it to everybody, so
Oh
they know
yeah,
I'm the one doing
yes.
this.
Fucking A. That's so rad. It's another
Here's
one of
how the
those things that works literarily more
mhm,
than it ever would on film. I really want to see her mom's heart stop in a way that is really rad on screen, though. Maybe in the next remake they'll get that.
maybe we'll get that. So apparently the novel ends with the town basically like getting aid. Everyone who all the teachers that survived retire from teaching. Sue publishes a memoir. Um,
When
there's
she
a
gets out of
report.
Arkham, right?
There's right. There's a report investigating other paranormal activities, and then there's a woman from Appalachia who's writing her sister about her telepathic daughter, and that's the end.
That's the sequel hook.
Right. Like that's King's sequel hook, but it's
We
not the
never got
sequel
a
hook of
Carrie
this
to the book.
movie.
I'd
No.
I'd read that. Give me Carrie to the book right now, Stephen King. Come on, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, you
Let's get
gave
it.
us The Shining too. You can give us Carrie too.
And Doctor Sleep was like, no lie, kind of the shit.
The movie was really good. I didn't read the book,
Yeah.
but the movie is really good. Like
Yeah,
Mike
I don't have
Flanagan
time for that
guy,
anymore. Yeah.
that Mike Flanagan guy,
He's
he seems like he knows what he's doing.
he's pretty good at making the movies, I think.
Hmm. Also, the
He's
television
got
shows.
he's got a real knack for telling stories visually and whatnot with moving
Indeed,
pictures.
indeed, you
You
do.
know?
Indeed, you
He's
do.
that kind of guy.
Yes, indeed, you do.
Word.
All right.
Word, word,
Well,
word.
Carrie 2013
We
opened
did it.
on Friday, October 18th in the year of our Lord 2013.
Oh.
It opened in third place the weekend that it came out. Not a great start heading into
No.
Halloween weekend.
Right? And it's Carrie, dude.
Yeah.
Oh man.
It opens to $16.1 million in its opening weekend. In number one, from Warner Brothers, future Academy Award winner for Best Director, Gravity. What if there was
Of
Gravity,
course.
starring
Hey, I
Sandy
liked
Bullock?
that movie. It was I
No, it's
mean, it
good.
was
No, it's good.
good.
It's good. In second place,
A
who's the
little bit of
captain
George
now?
Clooney.
It's Captain Phillips in second place
Oh, yeah, I didn't see that one.
in its second week. In third place, we have Carrie, which is the highest grossing new film opening this week. Right behind it, another film opening this week. What if we tried to do Heat, but with Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger both past their prime? It's Escape Plan.
Hey.
Hey, from Lionsgate. That one
Uh,
opens to about just shy of 10 million. In third place, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2, a
hey, I
movie
liked both of those movies.
a
They're
movie
cute.
I saw in theaters without ever having seen the first one.
Really? That's a shame.
Yeah. Yeah. Saw that one in
First
theaters.
was
Had
real
no
good.
idea what was going on.
Real
Um,
good.
yeah, I have since seen the first one, but the second
It's
one
a
I
lot
was
of
just,
fun.
yeah. Another movie I saw in theaters in sixth place, Prisoners, Denis Villeneuve's Prisoners in its fifth week.
I don't know what the fuck that is.
Oh, dude, that's Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal and Melissa Leo and Paul Dano, and
Ooh,
it's
I like Paul
about
Dano. Paul Dano is kind of my. I gotta watch all the things he's in because I like him that much. So I have
it's
to
a
watch this now. What's it
it's a
called?
good one. Prisoners. I'm
Who's
gonna warn you now, dude. It's a tough watch.
okay?
It's a tough watch.
Well, that means I
Um,
better watch it sooner or later, because sooner than later, because the older I get, the tougher it is to have a tough watch.
it's about a child abduction. I'll just say that, and
No, fuck,
it's a tough watch.
fuck,
It's
fuck, fuckity, fuck, fuck.
yeah. Is and I know
Worse
you're a
than
parent.
ransom.
Yeah, it's on it is worse than ransom. Yeah, a lot
Oh,
worse. Yeah.
because that's my like ransom is about as far as I can go.
I'm about to
That's
do a
such a good movie, you
I'm
guys.
about to do a spoiler for
Ransom.
for Prisoners, so like jump ahead 5 seconds if you don't want to hear it.
Okay.
Um, starting now, you get to see Hugh Jackman torture a dude.
That's cool. I mean, Huge Ackman is really rad.
He's great in the movie. Like he is hitting, like the fact that he did not get an Oscar nomination for that movie is kind of wild because if he should have gotten it for that and not fucking Les Mis, but you know,
Yeah.
like
I like that Hugh Jackman, he's so versatile, man. He just kind of weaves his way in and out of
mm-hmm.
Hollywood, just doing he does like the Nick Cage thing, but like everything he's in is incredible almost. Like,
Right. Right.
It's wild. But he does so many different things. You look at his filmography, and like he doesn't really have a. He's never really been outside of Wolverine. He's never been typecasted. But he's playing the same character, so it's not really typecasting. It's just like
Right.
continuing that role.
Exactly. It's just the role he's come back to the most amount of times, and one more time in this year's Deadpool, this year's Deadpool, later this year,
Maybe
August.
if Deadpool 3 proves popular enough, we'll get a Van Helsing too. Who knows?
Maybe look, man, and we'll cover it because we've covered it on this podcast, and we'll have to have Hope back to talk about it because she joined us for the first one. So
That sounds fantastic.
it does sound fun.
There's never going to be a Van Helsing 2, Steve.
I know there's not. I know
it's a shame because I think somebody now could take kind of a lesson from the original and make something that.
And I think
I think we're a little more self-aware now, and it would be a better thing. But still continue.
I said this at the time. He should connect because he's immortal. He should connect with Rick and Evie from the Mummy movies, with Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz from the Mummy movies.
That's where you start your dark universe.
That's what I said. That's what I said when we covered the episode like 3 years ago. That's exactly what I said.
Hey, Steven, what are you doing here on this podcast, dude? Go get to Universal and talk to those boys right now. Tell them your ideas.
They don't want to hear what I have to say. I would give it to them straight, and they don't want that. They want someone who's going to sugarcoat it.
It makes too much sense, probably, is what it is.
That's it. Rounding out the top 10, you've got Enough Said in number 7, Julia Louis-Dreyfus and James Gandolfini. Cool. In number 8, The Fifth Estate, which I think is that like Benedict Cumberbatch Julian Assange movie. That's exactly what that is. In 9th place, something called Runner Runner. Is that Justin Timberlake? That is Justin Timberlake in that movie.
Shrug Life Tonight.
Mm-hmm.
The last thing I remember him in was that one where you have your life expectancy on your wrist, and that's how you pay with stuff. It's called like In Time or something.
Oh god,
and like
that sounds awful.
Your amount of time to live is like a constantly ticking clock on your wrist, and to pay for things, you can use your time to pay for things, and people try to steal your time. Like it's a really amazing concept. It's a fucking shitty movie.
I was gonna say that sounds like one of those movies that's better in concept than in execution.
High concept that like the trailers, man. I was so excited. I went and saw that movie. I almost walked out of it like halfway through. But when I pay, I mean, it takes a lot for me to walk out of a movie I paid for, and I paid for that one. So the only one I've actually physically walked out of, I did not pay for, and that's the only reason I did it.
I've never walked out of a movie I paid for. And we'll talk about the movie that I came closest to doing that on this podcast one day, because it is a failed franchise starter.
Weird.
In 10th place, you've got James Wan's Insidious Chapter 2.
Oh, hey, people like that movie.
That's a good sequel. I haven't seen any of the other Insidious movies after it, but I've seen the first two. So
yeah, I think I just saw the first one.
It opened to about 16 million and garnered over the course of its box office run 35.3 million domestic, another 47.1 international, for a grand total of about 82.4 million worldwide. Doesn't even crack 100 million worldwide. That's off of a $30 million budget.
$30 million budget, though, that's almost 3 times the budget. So
right, I mean, but again, you're also not factoring in.
How do you do a sequel to Carrie? Like, point in case. How the fuck do you don't? Like, come on, man. Like, you can't. How do you make a sequel to that?
Well, again, you go the Stephen King route. There are other people who are exhibiting these traits. You examine another part.
That's more of a shared universe sort of thing. Like make it.
Oh yeah, we can't have sequels do that.
No, I'm saying it would be more of that than a direct sequel. It would be more of a universe, a world expanding sort of thing,
which I think it should be.
Okay.
I mean, particularly because
that's cool.
I mean, when you think about what Stephen King's novels are like he's constantly dropping references to other shit. Like we have reason to believe that like Carrie's dad and the girl from Firestarter are like from the same like the Center, I think is what it's
Well,
called. The
don't
Center,
those
like,
don't those Dark Tower books talk about how like all that stuff happens within like the same continuity, like and there's this
yep.
huge multiverse and whatever, and
Go
Matthew
back and listen
McConaughey's
to our
there,
Dark
and
Tower episode for all that shit. Like
that's the
we had to
first
bring in
one
a
I ever
couple
edited, you guys. It's the first one I ever edited.
we had to bring in a couple ringers for that episode because we did not understand it at all. So we brought in a couple of our friends, Mandy and Molly Gossage, who had read those books and knew them fairly well to
Bless them.
help us.
Bless them for doing all of that work for us.
Bless them both. Yes, absolutely. So yeah, this movie was not going to get a sequel, even if they wanted one. Which again, I have no reason of thinking they didn't.
I'm just saying it did okay though. I don't think it did poorly.
It
Even with
didn't make
marketing, I
back
think it's
enough of its
okay.
budget to warrant a sequel, because again, they poured a
No,
lot
not
into
at
the
all.
marketing on this one.
I'm just saying a lot of these movies that we cover on here just like did fucking horribly.
Well,
But this
and
one, it
again,
didn't do bad. It didn't do great, but I mean, people made money.
but
Like, they
here's the
got
thing:
their
I
money
don't
back and they
know
made a
that
little
they
on top.
did. I don't know that
They
they
did.
did. It's like you see these reports of like these big Hollywood blockbusters that are coming out like within the past year, and it's like one of the least profitable years in Hollywood. Like we talked about it on the Flash episode in particular, right? Like
Mhm.
that movie had to make like 400 million to break even because
Yeah.
of all the stuff that they put into like all the aspects of that production. But the projected budget of that movie was half of that. But to break even, they had to make twice that. So like this is just the projected budget. So if we do that with every movie, this movie has to make at least 60 domestic to break even. It
That's
doesn't
what I'm
hit that
saying.
number.
Oh,
60
domestic.
domestic to break
Gotcha.
even, and
Yeah.
it doesn't do that. Like, so I think that's the way we kind of realistically need to look at these. Is the return on the investment is not high enough given their perceived cost benefit analysis is not high enough for them to warrant. Hollywood math is notoriously murky because I don't think anyone really wants you to know how much money they're making, because I think they always need to like, I think if you want to know what's making money in Hollywood, look at what they're greenlighting, look at what they're signing off on. And I think that's the biggest way to tell. After Marvel, everyone was greenlighting either superhero stuff or shared universe stuff.
Or
Now
just comic
that
book stuff in general. If you can say
right.
that it has something to do with a comic book, even if it's a
Well,
Western,
that was
like
after
that's going to
X-Men in
elevate it.
particular. After He Who Must Not Be Named X-Men in particular, that was absolutely what happened.
Mhm.
And then it was like, well, now we've got
You
to
have
figure
your
out what
OGs
works
like
and
Men in Black.
right. But then it's the what works, what doesn't. And then once we hit on Iron Man and once we hit on Avengers, like those became the bellwethers that carried us through to where we are now. And now that's starting to fumble. So what are the two biggest movies of this year? It's Barbie and it's Oppenheimer. So what are we signing off on? We're signing off on Chris Nolan and we're signing off on toys. Not because Barbie is this like nuanced, like high concept thing that explores
Right.
like femininity and the patriarchy and all this shit.
No, because
toys.
it's an IP, and we have similar IPs, so
And
let's
that's
do
what
that.
sells. Right.
Right?
And why Barbie did
We're
well.
still doing Transformers, right? Yeah, keep pumping those out. Let's go.
Right. And this year, fuck it. They're gonna cross over with G.I. Joe. Because
Do
why
it.
the hell
Who
not?
cares? Who gives a
Right.
shit?
Who
And then
fucking
they'll have a
cares about
Barbie
anything?
crossover with all of that somehow.
Right. Exactly. Like
Completely ruining the original.
Yes, completely ruining anything.
Shitting all over it.
Any concept of art that any of these movies
Like
ever actually
Jaws
had.
2. Like worse than Jaws 2. Just take
Commerce
a giant
is
dump
the
on the
enemy
original.
of art. Commerce is the enemy of art. But that's the only reason that art is able to get made, is if
I
people
was
pay
gonna say
for
there
it.
is no art without commerce though, so like not in the way that we
it's a
it
fucked up
exists now.
Ouroboros, but there it is. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. There's been a lot of those in this podcast. Lots
Mm-hmm.
of snakes eating their tails tonight,
Well, and
man.
I feel like that's one. I mean, particularly this conversation right here, like this whole money making. What is Hollywood greenlighting? That's kind of the crux of this podcast, is because so often Hollywood will miss the mark or misunderstand why a certain thing did well, and they'll try to copy it without understanding what it is and why it worked. And so we end up with something like this. It's a horror remake. This is 2013. Yeah, the bloom was off the rose with some of these horror remakes that were getting pumped out, but it definitely fits along a lot of those, like that starts with 2003's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Marcus Nispel. Like it fits along those same lines with a lot of those. So why not? Why not remake Carrie? That fits, but we're not bringing enough into it to make it interesting or to make it stand out or to set it apart from what's come before. That it just kind of feels, again, very boilerplate. Performances are phenomenal, but one or two performances alone are not enough to rest the success of an entire movie on, when 95% of people aren't going to movies to see performances. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said before, 50% of this movie is a really cool adaptation of both the book and the other film, and the other half of it is just a soulless retread of what De Palma did in the original.
yeah.
And that's what, like, I do like this movie, but depending on what kind of mood I'm in, like, if I'm in a grumpy mood and I watch this movie, I'm gonna hate this movie.
Yeah. I get it, man.
Because like there's so much good stuff, but it's padded up with so much shit that's just like, why is this here, number
Mm-hmm.
one, and
Right.
number two, why is it this way? Why do I all of a sudden, I was in this really cool thing that felt modern and like a new interpretation, a modern retelling of something, and now all of a sudden, what am I doing back in the other one?
Right.
What's going on? What's
I'll
going on
tell
here?
you, I'll give you an example of a movie that I think does what you're wanting this movie to do better than this movie. It's the kind of the opposite side of the coin. Comes out the same year as this one. It's a movie we covered like in the first month that we had this fucking podcast.
Ages ago.
Evil Dead, the 2013 Evil Dead remake. It
Mm-hmm.
it retreads a lot of the same ground, but in a
It's
new and interesting way. Brings a
That's a
lot of
perfect
new stuff
remake.
to the table. Exactly, brings a
It's
lot of
up
new stuff to the
there.
table, and injects so much different into it that it adds to the lore of the original while still being its own very separate, very unique, very excellent thing.
Well, that's the biggest influence on my rating is I have to think of this as a remake
Mm-hmm.
and as just a film on
Mm-hmm.
its own. Is it a good remake? No, I don't think so. Honestly, overwhelmingly, I mean, more often than it is. No, it's not. Is it a good movie? Yeah, it's pretty good. I really
Yeah,
like it.
yeah,
It's
I had
pretty
fun.
good. Not a good remake, but a pretty good movie. Pretty good
Right,
movie.
right. And
A
again,
lot of really
like
cool shit in there.
it when I was a theater director at one of the first schools that I taught at, the theater director, the person who was the actual director of the program, I was the assistant, but she loved to do musicals, and she would do musicals that were very popular, like My Fair Lady or Wizard of Oz. And I'm like, we're not going to do those musicals as well as those movies. If people want to see those musicals, they can just stay home and watch those musicals and see them done a lot better than we're going to do them. Why don't we
Yeah.
do something unique that not everyone else is doing or has done a million times?
That doesn't
But I
have a
always got,
definitive version, you know?
yes, but I always got outvoted on those. Although me and the music director did end up talking her into the Woods before that movie got made, so I consider that a win.
Did you get to keep the fully erect fox penis?
Of course not. No, of course not.
Oh,
I taught at
fuck.
a Christian
Is it a
school. Of
fox or
course
a
not.
wolf? It's a
It's a
wolf,
wolf.
right? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
the big bad wolf.
Okay,
Yes.
so I've seen the film version, but I've also seen a filmed version of the play,
Same.
and that wolf is just sporting just a human dick fully
Yeah.
erect.
There is a dildo literally hanging off the front of that wolf costume, and a
Why?
very large one as well. Um, be,
Just
because
insanely large.
so much of those original Grimm's fairy tales were about the
I
dangers of
get
like
that, but
children wandering off, and so you add that, it works as both text and subtext, particularly when you listen to A, the lyrics of the song that he's singing, and B, the lyrics of the song that she sings after she escapes from the wolf. Both of those are very clearly talking about innocence lost, and it
Mhm.
is, in that, with that added layer of context, it deepens what the play is actually about.
I'm just saying I don't know if I needed the huge erect penis to kind of drive that home. I feel like the songs do a good enough job. And like, hey, that's a choice that the people who made that play made,
The
and like I
director
stand
decided that.
behind
Yeah.
that. Like that's fucking rad as shit. Do whatever you want to do. It's just that's not like that's fucking. I don't get it. I don't get it.
Hey Tucker, you
Like
remember
good
like
for them. Like great, dude. Like whatever, but I don't get it.
you remember 15 minutes ago when we were getting ready to end this podcast?
Yeah, dude, what happened? I count on you to steer
You
us
you
home,
fucking
Steven.
derailed us
I
so
would
fucking hard.
never. I would
You
never do
always.
that.
Tomatometer score on this film is 50%. Critics' consensus, it
Eh.
boasts a talented cast, but Kimberly Pierce's quote reimagining of Brian De Palma's horror classic finds little new in the Stephen King novel and feels woefully unnecessary. The Metascore on this one is a 53 based on mixed or average reviews from 34 critics. And the Letterboxd score is a 2.5. So pretty much right down the middle. Tucker, out of 5 stars. How are you rating 2013's Carrie?
This is a 2.75 for me.
All
Because
right.
I really, really, really want to give it a 3, but I just can't.
Whereas I can and did give it a 3. So, yeah. That's where I land
So
on
it
Carrie
averages out at
2013.
about 3.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Yeah. It ends up being about a 3. So
Which is
it was like
rad.
a 3.8 something. But yeah,
That's fair. There's just a few things in this movie that, as much as I'm enjoying myself, sometimes something will creep up that's just so. I'm like, what the fuck?
yeah.
Why? And which I've
Like
discussed many of those things
you
in
have.
the last 2 hours of this podcast.
One of the few things that bothered me that I didn't really bring up is like, and I brought this up on the 2013 Evil Dead episode, that kind of like, it was really popular in horror at the time, that kind of unnaturally like jerky motion thing that we added in just about every horror movie around that time. I don't
Yeah.
care for it. I don't much like it. And Carrie was doing that toward the end when she was doing her telekinesis thing, and it kind of bugged me a little bit. But it was such a small part that I was able to kind of move past it
Yeah.
fairly well. But yeah,
Yeah, I do like this movie. Like this is a movie
I do
I will
too.
watch again at some
Yeah,
point. Like we didn't have to do a podcast on this for me to watch it sometime in the next like year or two. Like
right.
I would have watched it anyway, even though I've
Yeah,
seen it like 4 or 5 times already since it came out.
right. And I'm
Um,
considering maybe adding it to my collection at some point in the future, along with I need to find a good 4K version of the original too. But I would not mind adding both of those to my collection. So
the original, because of what I said before about my mom liking it so much, and I've seen it so many times over the years, it kind of pains me to say that while I still love that movie, it's one I just like I've just seen it so many fucking times, man.
sure, man.
Like I watched it a couple years ago with Jimmy, and like after we watched it, I was like, that was great, but I just don't know how many more I got in me. Like,
Which is fair, man.
ah, like
Whereas
fuck, dude.
I mean,
It's like
I've
Sweet Home Alabama, man. I've heard it so many times. Is it wonderful? Sure, whatever. But oh my gosh, I'm done with it. Kind of done with it.
I mean,
It's
and I've
great.
only
It's a
seen it a few
classic. It's a
times. Like
masterpiece.
I didn't get to share my Carrie history, but like I engaged with it during the pandemic and during lockdown.
Like you engaged with 90% of everything you've seen in your life.
Correct. At least as far as horror goes, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, engaged with it during the pandemic for the first time and didn't really think about any of the other movies in the franchise. Didn't really care. And then earlier this week, when I remembered we were doing Carrie, I was like, well, I want to watch all the Carries, so I
Oh,
have a
this
place
was
to
your
talk
first
about.
time to see any of them except for the first one.
Correct.
I think you
Yeah.
implied that before, but I kind of caught on to it, but I wasn't sure if that's what you
Yeah.
meant.
No, I hadn't seen any of these since then. So now I have kind of a definitive idea. And I find it very interesting that this is one of the more adapted King properties. But again, I think it's because of the universality of the high school experience and how, while the circumstances change, the people don't. People continue to be shitty. And so because of that, art is possible.
Yeah, dude.
But yeah,
Okay.
that is the end of our episode on 2013's Carrie. It is also the end of our Stephen King miniseries.
Oh, get it. Woo!
I feel really bad about that guy's penis, honestly. But that is the end of our Stephen King miniseries for January. Next month, it will not be another miniseries, but we do have some really fun episodes coming your way. I'm actually kind of excited. We've of course got our buddy Mike Snoonian back for our annual Valentine's episode as well. That's going to be a treat. So keep your eyes on the social medias. Of course, if you're a patron, you get to know what we're covering at the beginning of every month.
What?
So head on over to patreon.com/disenfranchpod, pay us $5 a month. And in addition to knowing early, you also get episodes to, I want to say, I would say weekly, but we all know that the last week's didn't drop because Tucker, but the What Are We Watching series that we
It'll get there before this comes out, I promise.
also the episode of Unenfranchised that we've been discussing will drop in just a couple of days on the Rage Carrie 2. So if you're a fan of that movie and not a patron, get over there. We've covered
Look,
a
I
lot of
might drop that early just because I'm really excited to get it out. I might put it out like Saturday, maybe, or maybe even Friday. It's winter. No one's going out, Steven. It'll be fine.
well,
Cold
it's
as
supposed to
fuck.
be warming up next weekend. At least here in the Midwest it is. So
Well. Yo, you're not wrong though. Next month is stacked. Like it starts off kind of weak sauce, but like once you get to the middle, man, it don't stop.
Yeah. And then we head into March, and honestly, I'm very excited about what we got planned for March
March
too.
is
Like
pretty exciting too, for a lot of reasons.
and
For a
then we've
lot of
got another
reasons.
theme month coming up in April, a sequel theme month to one we've done before.
Dude, look, remember the hell you put me through at the end of last year with all those cartoon movies and all those shitty movies you made me watch? It was like 2 months there where like it was pretty consistently shitty movies and like I just wanted to punch myself in the face the entire time.
I
But
mean,
you
you
know
did
what,
sign on for this,
Steven?
but sure.
You've got you this is good. I like this. The next 3 months, way into it.
Right
Way
on.
fucking into it.
We honestly do have some really great stuff. We've got a few really good guests planned, some new, some returning. So just buckle up, guys, because we do have a lot of fun stuff heading your way.
It's gonna be
In the
good.
meantime, you can find us on social media. You can find us at disenfranchpod on Blue Sky, Instagram, Letterboxd, and Facebook. Also YouTube as well. Please give us a follow over there. Watch all of our episodes on YouTube. Tucker's working on getting us into YouTube Music. He's going to look into that this week. Maybe that'll happen by the time this episode drops. Maybe it won't. You'll just have to wait and find out.
Yeah, that's my
And
bad because I didn't realize until like 2 days before they shut down um, YouTube or they shut down Google
Google Podcasts.
Podcasts.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about that till like 2 days before it happened. So sorry. If I had known about it in advance, we'd already be there. Like,
Right. We're getting there.
yeah, I'm working on it.
We're getting there.
It's gonna be rad. Like
yeah.
Joe says that it's fucking rad. So like I'm excited to do it. I just haven't had a
he
chance.
swears by it. Yeah, he's really excited about it. That is friend of the show, JP Leck. You can also hit us up on email, disenfranchpod@gmail.com. What films, failed franchise starters would you like to hear us cover in the future? What are, you can just write us and say hi, introduce yourself.
What's your favorite Carrie movie?
Yeah. Let us know what your favorite Carrie movie is. Disenfranchpod@gmail.com again is that address. I'm your host, Stephen Foxworthy. You can find me on Instagram, Letterboxd, and Blue Sky at Chewy Walrus. The absent Brett Wright can be found on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Letterboxd at sus_warlock. I think it's just sus warlock on Blue Sky. Tucker, where can we find you these days?
I'm on the YouTubes and the Instagrams at Ice909. That's ICENINE, the number 0 and the number 9. Also, Tux Mugs is still going on.
It is.
I think the schedule that I'd like to stick with moving forward would be a post every 2 weeks.
Okay.
I'd like to do more, honestly, and at some point that might be possible, but it's going to have to grow for that to happen.
Understood.
It's like those YouTubers, man, and you got to put work into it. You can't just,
we got
like,
lives
if you have a
outside of this
full-time
shit,
job, like, unless you get enough going on to where it can be your full-time job, you just got to wait for that shit to drop.
That's it. And we ain't making that much right now. So, yeah.
No, dude. Sponsors are not rolling in, surprisingly.
They are not. Tragically,
No,
they're not.
she forgot to mention the page, but I feel like Tina Fey endorsed us the other night.
Talking about her scary mug.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like if she knew about Tuck mugs, she'd straight up follow the fuck out of it for sure.
I feel like maybe you should reach out to her on the internet.
Well, I feel like I need to.
We know you have some success with getting in contact with celebrities on the internet. So
Not the director of the Rage Carrie 2, unfortunately, because I gotta find out why that motherfucker was filmed in 4:3.
I mean,
Please, I
you got
need to
Patty
know.
Arquette yelling at you, man.
Mister, I gots to know.
Yeah, she still hasn't.
Yeah.
She still has straight up not said anything. Honestly, though, I don't think she's been on Instagram for a
Yeah, I
while. Like
noticed
the
that
last thing she
too.
posted was in October of last year. So
Come on, Cat Shay. I gotta talk to you, dude. I gotta know. Why was it 4:3? Why? Why?
I don't know. Maybe when we cover her Nancy Drew movie with Sophia Lillis, we can try to reach out to her again, and you can get
But
that
look,
question
like,
answered.
how weird is it? Nobody's ever done that. No one's ever noticed that before. Do you think anybody in the history of that film has ever done what I did
I don't
yesterday?
think anyone else but you cares enough to do what you did.
That's partially what I'm saying. So no one else has I guarantee you no one else has noticed this. I feel like I need a resolution to it because like it's not every day that you're the first person to notice or think of something. It doesn't happen every day. Rarely happens. Some people go their entire lives and never have an original fucking thought or discovery. But your boy found that shit. And so I gotta know, man. Anyway, yeah, Tuck mugs. Tuck_mugs on Instagram. Like, if you trying to look at some mugs on the internet, Tuck mugs is the spot.
There you go.
That's it.
And so that is all we've got. Join us next week again. We're kicking off a great run of episodes next week. So join us then.
Sorry, go ahead.
Until next time, this has been the Disenfranchised Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Foxworthy. For Tucker and the absent Brett Wright, until next time, remember, they're all going to laugh at you.
Hey, plug it up, would you?